oh, well, I'm using objective information. And it's like, okay, but I'm technically using objective information if I were to say I enjoyed it, because that's true. That's like whether you
Yeah.
enjoyed something or not. That's based on how your brain reacts to all this. So like you can technically use that objective information to make an assessment of the quality based on their public attitudes. Like, oh, if you don't criticize this, it's your fault we're getting bad media, even though it's only bad because that's our standard and not everyone else's. I think they try to promote a whole "you're the problem if you don't hold our standards," which I think is tribalistic, immature. Yeah, I think it's not a good mindset.
Definitely.
No.
Yeah,
Ultimately, I'm not painting my opinion as objective.
it goes back to my running into a wall theory.
Yeah.
I ran into a wall and I hated it. Well, it gets clicks, so let me run into the wall again and just keep doing that.
Yeah,
because
you know what? Like, in some ways, I do feel bad for them. I mean, I'm not. It's not like the priority whenever I think about these guys, but I do. There's a little bit of sympathy that like they have gotten themselves in this position where they've gotten successful doing this.
Yeah.
And that means that they, you know, they're not only not incentivized, they're disincentivized to make a 4 or 5 hour stream just totally laying out every little thing that they love about a movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's not going to fucking get the views. People are going to show up and be like, oh, this isn't fun. You know, it doesn't make me feel good. Letting people consume media the way that they choose to, as long as it's not like negatively affecting anybody else's ability to do that. And these guys enjoying this way doesn't affect me in any practical way. It might challenge me and make me go, why are you doing that? But you know, I'm trying to practice what I preach here, and so like
now hold on.
I mean, another thing is,
I was under the impression that you're supposed to invalidate these criticisms.
Yeah, had a long run there. I thought I would play that first, but yeah, welcome to anyone up on the stream or watching this stream in the future for some reason. So this time around, at least I'm going to investigate sort of this particular edit of these guys, the Fandom Initiative, when SK and Southpaw came on, because I believe there's some interesting insight into that. I could be wrong, could be right. Let's go. Ola Jeb. Ooh, I always want to say Jeb. Such a normal name.
I'm curious though. Like, what is like overanalyzing? When does it become over?
Well, that's the thing. That's what I was about to say. This goes to prove the subjectivity of this, is because we're all consuming it in our own subjective ways, and we value certain things. We put weight on different aspects of, you know, we focused on certain things. So over analyzing to me is just the right amount of analyzing to you. I'm under analyzing it to you. You know what I mean? It's all just subjective.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, like it's not my way of enjoying films, but like hearing the way you guys kind of your perspective on it, I understand the appeal, and I mean, it does sound like there's some fun to it, but I think ultimately you guys understand that it's all subjective. So, my question to you is, why exactly do you think EFAP and Mahler, why they have to insist that similar to how you guys view things, maybe like why they have to insist that they're being objective and that they are objectively correct in all these things?
Well, I think it's because they have this
SK?
very I think it's because they have this very narcissistic view of the
Yeah, okay, SK. Jump right onto the bad faith train. You should know yourself, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're just conveniently forgetting for this particular interview that's not the only thing that they measure things on, but do go on about narcissism. I'm sure it fits for a lot of people. Everyone on this panel, especially Dane in particular.
ways that they approach things, or how they understand, because like, I mean, you literally have them saying, oh yeah, I know how to assess law shows based on the actual law because I watched other law shows, or putting people in law university.
I went to university for law.
I have a 1 minute clip here from one of my videos, and I'd be curious to your guys' read on like how accurate this is, just based on kind of my sense of it. But yeah, I'd be curious what you think of how I mean, this is kind of on the fly, but as I've said before, how is it objective if we disagree?
True.
Watch their head explode.
Oh, pause. I hate this already. I'm sorry. Okay, so
Yeah, I would be the same exact way as Southpaw. This is so freaking stupid. How can it be objective if we disagree? Okay, this is a quarter in my hand. You can't see it, but it's a quarter. Actually, it's a nickel, but it's dark in my room. This is a quarter. If someone says, like I said before, it's a quarter, it's really a nickel. They're objectively wrong. No matter how much, it's a nickel. That's how you can be wrong. There are objective facts about the world. Let's hear Southpaw give it. And freaking Dane's dumbass response to it.
the Holocaust happened. That is an objective fact. Holocaust deniers exist. It can still be an objective matter, even if people disagree. Like that. So objectivity would be
comparing,
dealing with like
two different things.
What's happening as a fact, right?
That's comparing. It's not the same thing as how you feel about a movie.
Okay, I had a visceral reaction to just what you said. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I'm pushing back against it. I think your visceral reaction is wrong because you comparing the Holocaust to how one person feels about a movie is just kind of, it's silly.
Is it objective if we disagree?
Well, obviously Dane had a emotional reaction just to that comparison, but yes, is he going into Holocaust denial here? You know, he's sort of, I think he would be against going against the Holocaust in this particular case, but who knows? This almost seems like a case for Holocaustal denial. Southpaw pretty much said it's an objective fact. The Holocaust agree. He didn't disagree with that. He's like, oh, that's a bad example. Ugh. Oh God. It's just, he just, Dane seems to sense the bad faith in this, and he can't push back because these are his allies. That's my assessment of this particular case here.
I think there needs to be a little more than whether or not
Well,
there's
it's a starting point.
and there's an agreement.
You got me to pause the thing, so you know it's a starting point. That was really just where I was starting. But like, yeah, I mean, it's a good place to start. Yeah. I feel like if you're telling me that something's objectively bad, and I say that I had loved it, and it's like, you know, the best thing I've ever seen or whatever, which is all dependent on my frame of reference, what I've seen before, you know, what I value, and so on and so forth. So like, it just kind of starts to fall apart.
What you value does not actually matter when it comes to objective reality. Okay, apple is an apple, an orange is an orange. Your distortion of reality will not change those facts about those items. It's just a simple fact. It's a matter of diagnosing what is objective, and they don't even really get into the objective criticism. They're just saying, oh, their objective opinions are objective. Like, ugh. I mean, SK sort of just, I really don't like SK show, and Southpaw is the only one who does seem a good job. I did a recording this already. I think I was sort of being too nice to Southpaw. So let me try to be a little bit more critical to him, even though everything he says here seems to be, most of the things he says here is rather well done within this podcast.
Immediately, I don't see how it can become a stronger argument for being objective from there. The problem I have with it is that from there, it becomes about dismissing the other person as there's something dysfunctional about them. They're stupid. They're wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dane is making the distinction between material objectivism and quantitative objectivism. Okay. Yes, I do like Southpaw. SK, I've been going through some of his videos, and I'm like, what the hell? A lot of people have been covering a lot of SK's Spider-Man videos recently, if you look out there. I think a good word would be intersubjective rather than objective, because I doubt every person can completely agree on a piece of media. I would agree with that, at least in theory. I mean, there are objective things within the media that sort of goes along, and you can have the intersubjective interpretation of the objective elements within any given piece of media, and to see how they affect you personally, how they can affect the audience generally. There's many different sub levels to that particular argument here. Oh, devil's advocate. Let's see. Devil's advocate, because SP Southpaw get some unwarranted criticism thrown their way. Okay, please do. Howdy, mystery stranger. Let's continue.
We've seen numerous instances where someone just, Cinema Owens just said he liked the third act of Black Widow, and he said, yeah, of course you do. He says stuff like, yeah, you'll clap at anything. He says, oh, you're clapping like a fucking retard at this.
Yeah, this really pisses me off. I mean, they're on the particular issue of objective criticism, and SK just brings up this out-of-pocket thing of Rags being an asshole. Okay, Rags is an asshole sometimes. Some people find it funny. Some people find it offensive. This has nothing to do with the subject matter that they are talking about here. It has nothing to do with just personal observation that I wanted to point out.
Yeah, I have a
worst of I said like fucking consumer or something.
Show ready to go.
Yeah, that's also what he said.
So, and I just want to clarify, I do not love Black Widow at all, and I don't understand how people can enjoy it. But if you enjoy it, that's fine. Now, what I will say is, when people are saying it's objectively bad, I think that there's like an oxymoron going on here, that, and also a breakdown in communication that's happening on both sides. So I think that what they're talking about is, when they're calling something objectively bad, they are outlining things that SK and I spent the good first half hour of this talking about what they might consider objective issues. SK and I don't consider them, but
yeah, because I cut it out. They're talking about the disappearing knife in Star Wars. Of course, Return of the Jedi. That would be objective fact. Oxymoron, I really don't get it, but yeah, I do agree that it's a matter of people like Dane, everyone in the Fandom Initiative misunderstanding what EFAP crowd talks about when they talk about objective criticism. Fundamental difference in definitions. I don't know why I said oxymoron. Maybe just wanted to use the moron.
Someone that calls themselves an objectivist might consider something like closing the distance an objective issue, right? They just categorize it as that. And I think that they're wrong to categorize it as that, but that's what they are talking about. And so when they say something is objectively bad, they're talking about how there's lots of logical issues. There's lots of, for example, just closing the distance. It's prevalent throughout the whole movie. You can like it.
It's still not objective. That's just them using the wrong word. That's just them not understanding the concept.
I agree.
They definitely don't understand it, because with bad,
they don't understand it at all.
Comes down to,
I think they do understand it. They really outline objective criticism quite well. Do they always live up to that standard of objective criticism? That's a different matter altogether. You would have to go through a certain case to see if they're being objective with their criticism. And there's a lot of elements, a lot of media where objective criticism, like everywhere, everywhere, everyone, that one with the Chinese weird things. Sort of some stories don't hold up well to objective criticism as a critic scale. I should have really looked that up.
Yeah, it comes down to it's not desirable or less favorable. That's what it means. And what's desirable and what's favorable, that comes down to what you feel.
And what you notice, even, like the knife thing in The Last Jedi. Several people didn't even notice it,
That's the thing, right? In order to make a case for whether this is the right or wrong thing to do, and it's a right or wrong creative choice to make, in order for you to actually make that point, you have to appeal to some sort of value that you hold.
Right.
And at that point, that value.
You don't necessarily have to appeal to a certain value that you personally hold. There's industry standards, storytelling standards established throughout writing. There is classes and education and training and what actually works within the market for the audience, what makes the best money and what gets the best criticism. I think there's a lot of different elements that really take into account, and they're really taking a look at this simplistically, but for at least SK in this case, he might be trying to dumb this down for Dame Bob and Eduardo here, so I'm not gonna be too harsh toward him. But he is rather dumb, as I highlighted in my beginning section where he was talking about how could it be objective if the brain, I think in my brain that it's good, so isn't that an objective thing? No, it's not something that can be measured. You can be freaking lying about your opinion. Plenty of people lie. These guys always go on about how all the other critics, Phantom Menace, and some likes are grifting. That would be a form of lying for money. That would be lying about your opinion. So, yeah, sort of moot there.
Of yours. It's like, okay, so why do you value this? It's like, oh, well, that's what a story should be. I think Rags even said, how am I supposed to be invested if people...
Yeah. Their point is standards are still technically subjective. Yes. Their points is standards are technically subjective. That's just a way to sort of weasel your way out of actually saying what is good storytelling. I mean, yeah, I'll agree. Standards established over long periods of time aren't truth. Like JP says, just because the Bible might not be technically true, it's metaphorically true. And I think there's a certain sort of truth to what we consider standards. Like even with Rian Johnson, I think I could objectively prove that his subversion of The Last Jedi is just like, the metaphor I use is, yeah, he subverted expectations just by doing everything the opposite. And that takes no skill. You set it up like you think that who was the emperor wannabe in that? I forget his name right at the moment. And you just kill him off. Many moments like that. You expect it because of the tropes of Star Wars for the setups to be a certain way, and he just does the complete opposite. He takes the cake and just flips it over. That's my personal opinion on that particular thing. And I'm not gonna.
People can just survive things they shouldn't.
Which appeals to emotional.
I mean, what I would say is, well, yeah, and what I would say is, firstly, you like Far From Home, and that's shit filled with plot armor. But also, there's other things than...
I wouldn't actually freaking on any of SK's video. I haven't gone through him myself. He's been getting a lot of criticism for his Spider-Man. I might actually try to go through his Infinity War one, but I'm convinced that his Infinity War video is a troll. Try watching it yourself sometime. I'll have to rewatch the movie and do a couple things before I approach SK's video on that angle.
Just whether a character survives something to experience watching a movie.
Example of something that I really love, and I also think is like, yeah, a lot of it doesn't really make sense if you break it down. Would be something like Elf, right? Like 2003's Elf. I mean, we're talking about a world where Santa Claus exists, and the main conflict of the movie is that people aren't believing in Santa Claus, and you're just thinking, how is this possible? If you really think about it, which I don't think that most people do, but it's pretty obvious what the issue is there, right? When you're asking, how could that even be a thing where people don't believe that Santa Claus exists if he does? What do all the parents think of when like their kids are receiving gifts that nobody bought? And those are things where I would just say, those are like criticisms, those are questions you can raise. But also, I don't care because I don't think that those things matter when it comes to Elf. And I think that if you guys want to just say, it doesn't matter if people close distance, it doesn't matter if characters survive things that they shouldn't, I can't tell you that you can't say that. I can tell you that's not going to change what SK and I say about the movie. I can tell you that's not going to invalidate our criticisms. That's not going to nullify them. But we can't really force you to value them any more than we do, right?
Yeah, I'll agree with some cases. Like Toy Story is a great example. The sort of how do the like Buzz Lightyear not thinking he's a toy, yet he acts like all the other toys. Sometimes you got to go with the premise, go with it, so you don't break it in your head. Sometimes you got to embrace the fantasy of some of these more supernatural elements to sort of and you got to judge it based off of that. Objective criticism can still be applied to it in certain cases, but it tends, that sort of question sort of breaks the logic, internal logic of the film, in the film itself, when they sort of go after the sort of bully Butch later and expose themselves, also sort of breaks that logic, but you let certain passes to be made in extreme circumstances. Andrew Clark, if they solved that issue, it would make Toy Story better, though. I just don't know how they could solve it very easily. They could have a strenuous clause, like if someone's insane, or if we can get someone to believe they're insane, we can sort of fuck with them some. But I don't think that's actually needed. I will agree, if they could have resolved that sort of break in the logic of Toy Story, it would have been much better, at least for a certain segment of the population. But you also have the audience who's kids. So I don't think that was a big concern of them to work around that internal logic.
You guys to value the you know, kind of like, because the thing is, you've created this mindset for yourself just by starting down the path. You've created it to where you're going to become more and more hyper aware of things that you wouldn't be otherwise. So it's become like game for your brains at this point, where you're not, you know, you're more focused on that than just enjoying the movie as, you know, a whole, as an experience, which is,
that's
you know,
totally valid pitfall of it too.
So I mean, what exactly?
Yes, but you can also separate that sort of. Dane's acting like if you're going at objective criticism, you cannot enjoy a movie if it has breaks in internal logic. And that is just, I mean, it might work that way for some people, but he's just conflating. Yeah, I don't think that people enjoy, you look at films in the subjective way, gotta ruin so many films. Maybe not. Maybe you can be like a note. Yeah, I think make a note of it and be like, okay, within this circumstance, like with Toy Story or Elf, you just be like, okay, I'll give it a pass. It's a fantasy world. If it was set more in a realistic setting, anything like that, it would probably create more of a cognitive dissonance, but the setting can give the exemption from die-hard internal logic, unless it's like really badly done and set up. It's a balancing act, in my personal opinion, between what the objective qualities will affect you and which qualities will not in any given circumstances. Yeah, absolutely. Superhero movies are absolute example of that. Like Southpaw and SK are constantly criticizing, I think even EFAP is criticizing a lot of superhero movies like Doc Ock. He has a normal human body, but he's taken all these blows from Spider-Man, who has supernatural strength. Yeah, if you consider it to be in the real world, which is supernatural powers, Doc Ock shouldn't be able to take these blasts. But if you put it in a certain context of this was done based off of a comic book where comic book logic works, if you can make that twist in your brain, this is a comic book movie, he's a supervillain, so we can take this. You can also have your own headcanon, like maybe the tentacles improved his actual physical stats somehow. There's many different elements where you sort of can get this off. I mean, just ignoring these, I think as a critic, just ignoring these issues and not noticing them, even when someone tells you about them and saying this is just bad, to actually judge movies this way, like Dane's doing. Yeah, Dane almost wants people to have lower, stupider expectations and just agree with him that that's the right way to do it. And not everyone wants to have lower standards. Someone has different standards. I might mock them for it if they're arrogant. Be playful, but I'm not going to say it's great. I'm just going to tell some people, yeah, your objective standards, you're finding your criticism, this is just looking at these objective standards. You're just totally discounting that. Had plenty of experiences of that in my little bit of time of looking at criticism on YouTube.
Do you think differentiates your view, your acceptance that, that is just sort of your bag and not necessarily this like objective measure, and EFAP and Mahler and Rags outside of just like narcissism?
I feel like it kind of sums it up when you say without the narcissism, because I feel their whole objective.
Oh, I think SK is definitely more narcissistic. You see him respond to this one video trying to debunk him. Oh God, that's just horrible. I don't even want to bring it up. He started his counter video to bring up the fact that this guy Colin was transphobic. And then when people are like, you sort of poisoned the well by the first minute bringing up all this sus stuff and calling him transphobic. And this dude, I wouldn't even consider him transphobic. He's just trans critical. And of course, to someone like SK, Southpaw is mad over over a TV show. In reality, it's a lot more, but SK put out that video, and I don't like that video just because of SK's attitude in general. Frankly, I think SK is sort of bringing down Southpaw's whole argument down on his head, but he's going to have a video explaining it, I believe, if I am hearing things right.
Mindset is a product of the narcissism.
Let me just tell you real quick what I said in there. So basically, what I suspect, and this is based just really on, I don't know, just thinking about it. They want to be convinced that they are objectively correct about things, but really they're just kind of post hoc rationalizing their opinions, like how they felt about a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Is that accurate at all?
That's another way you can read it.
Not that they're doing it on purpose.
This is all, they're like, this is all speculative, of course. And what I mean by that is, the things we're actually.
You mean you're pulling out of your ass because you're at war with EFAP? I understand the negativity from SK here. Frankly, I don't know why he got involved. Southpaw was his friend, I guess, but he got really freaking involved in this Southpaw drama. It seems to be almost a excessive degree, so I think there's another angle for SK, but I don't know any facts about that, so I can't make any. That's speculation, as SK just put on.
Actually, talking about that's not speculative. That actually happened, but like we're trying to speculate why these things are happening.
So I'm also I also just want to argue SK and I probably aren't the best people to talk about this in particular, just because we aren't the ones that are fervently advocating for objectivity. We have a mutual friend, however, who, even though our agreements and disagreements with him are mixed. SK agrees with him and disagrees with him on some things that I might agree or disagree with him on. But he's called the Jolly Chap, and I've shown you a couple of his messages, and I can disagree with some things that he says, but also he says things that I think are fairly reasonable. But he's also a guy who believes in objectivity, which I don't, but I can absolutely hook you guys up with him because he would be a better choice to talk to about this particular word. Okay. He's got that perspective. SK and I would just simply tell you, yeah, the difference here is that EFAP believes in objectivity, and this is the thing. I don't think that Jolly Chap is a narcissist, even if he believes in objectivity. I think.
Thank you for dispelling that idea. Objective criticism has some link to narcissism, which keeps getting reinforced by both Dane and SK here. Thank you, Southpaw, for clearing that up. And just to let everyone in the audience know, this Jolly Chap convo didn't happen. You know why? Because they don't actually care. Speculation of my own. They don't care about understanding objective criticism. They just want to mischaracterize it, misunderstand it. Goes back to my 4 Ds: dumb, dishonest, delusional, or D, all of above. And you can play this game at home, folks. What is Dane, Bob, or Eduardo? Even throw SK in there sometimes. Maybe in Southpaw, in some regards, I don't see much of that. I think Southpaw does some stupid stuff, which I'll get into in just a little bit. But seriously, there's just so much wrong with their coverage of their approach. I mean, I don't know if Dane started the fight about Southpaw to sort of have an excuse to avoid talking to this jolly chap to sort of understand objective criticism, or if it just wouldn't have happened on its own. But again, speculation.
That he might, my perspective might be he's using the wrong word. I want to highlight, I know that it's not going to matter because SK and I are going to be told we're the devils, and we said that all EFAP fans are awful people. I just want to highlight, no, that there are EFAP fans who've seen SK's video, have given decent responses to it, who've responded reasonably to it. And I'd say Jolly Chap, of course, being a contributor to this whole thing and understanding how this whole thing happened, is one of them. So I just want to get.
And just to clarify, I watched SK's video. Jolly Chap has a section in this. I think personally his section illuminates the most that this is just a whole bunch of stupidity. People, Southpaw, SK, everyone on EFAP just misunderstanding everyone else. There might be a little bit more to that, which might be getting into. Gonna have to get into that, but I really think this is about misunderstanding, miscommunication, the whole drama between Southpaw and these guys. It could be more nefarious. I don't know. I'm not willing to take that leap.
Give a fair voice to that perspective, which seems impossible to do because it's two of us who don't like EFAP versus three of you guys who hate EFAP's community even more. So,
well,
no, I mean,
I'll go as far as saying I think they're straight up the worst community I've seen.
I actually don't know about that, but they are bad. I actually don't.
I'll actually agree with Bob here. EFAP community can get a little bit on the toxic side. I will agree, especially some diehard supporters. Hell, even SK has converted one of them. Someone I had personal run-ins, TK something. But yeah.
They don't have the worst general takes as far as like the, you can probably get worse, like just borderline white supremacist takes from other YouTubers audience. But like when it comes
I guess
to
I should say like in the media sphere or commentary sphere, whatever. I think they're
like,
the worst.
Coordinated kind of harassment, the mob mentality is really fucking bad with EFAP. So.
Just earlier today.
Yeah, I don't know about that. They try to argue things and they tend to be dismissive and get their takes from EFAP. And when some of the people are critical of EFAP, EFAP can get sort of ash-hole-ish, but SK can do the same thing. I haven't seen Southpaw really do it. He tries to be reasonable from what I've seen. He can definitely get some asshole-ish tendencies in the comments section from what I've seen, but in some cases, I think it can be warranted. In his Twitter, dude needs to stop tweeting so much. That's my personal opinion. There's nothing wrong with it that I've seen, seriously, but let's move on.
Today, I called them the stupidest community I've ever seen. And that's, again, not referring to all of them, but holy shit, the volume of grief that SK and I have dealt with over everything here.
Yeah, you can just check the...
Yeah, they are biased, okay. Southpaw brought up, they are very biased against EFAP, so getting their take is a little bit biased.
Unconscionable.
We've been seeing a bit of it, yeah.
I've seen them. They're yeah.
But also I want to say so there's a group chat of a few of them who are even from, most of them are from the Facebook community for this thing, and they contacted me and SK because they watched SK's video and they wanted to do like a Q&A. They wanted to ask me and SK certain questions about this whole thing. They wanted clarification, and we've literally been open about this. It's like, if you have questions for us, we'll talk to you, and it'll be through DMs, it'll be through streams, it'll be through whatever. And these guys were included. And again, these are EFAP fans or former fans. I think most of them are still fans to some degree, but
the Southpaw, in my personal opinion, really should learn the art of condensation or condensing his sort of points a little bit, because all this stuff, yeah, you can have all these streams to clarify things and argue with people, but the general audience who are just more in EFAP for entertainment won't want to watch all this stuff. They'll just go with the grand narrative set up by people who dislike Southpaw, and probably people who really dislike SK a lot more, because SK, he's got some hot takes and he does not take criticism anywhat well.
These are people that act reasonable. And so I don't want to say that the whole fan base is like this. And by the way, one of them sent me a message saying, if you read this while you are alive, tell him, I'm salty that I can't comment. May their bananas be bruised for 5 years. There you go, Luke the First. Actual Fandom is correct that he is arguing it poorly. At SK was able to say it better. When you set objective standards, you are thereby subjectively selecting values of which to apply objective standards. Actual Fandom is wrong, though, that it isn't objective. It is as objective as we consider anything. So again, don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, that's very well put. You are using your subjective process as a critic to apply where the objective elements within the media affect the quality, the objective quality of the film. Now, it can break down on a couple different levels, as I already went through. But yeah, that is a very quick encapsulation that really just should get through Dane's head, but it should get through all these guys' head, but they still don't understand it because they don't want to, in my personal opinion. They don't care about understanding objective criticism, just the bad actors, I say that in air quotes, who try to use this to prove their points.
Read that out. That's what he said, and I cannot argue it very well.
I agree with the first part. I was not arguing it well. I'm pretty fucking tired today, so like, I don't know that I'd have to think about the second part, but
yeah, I don't think that's the problem, Dane. Sorry. And Dane's the really only person who's really in this. Eduardo, well, we're going to get to him in a moment, and they're just laugh tracks with some background. It's mainly between Southpaw, SK a little bit, and Dane is the main players here.
Generally, like, we really are wanting to be speaking with EFAP in particular. So like, I apologize on behalf of all of them.
And I think this is their move. They're trying to set this sort of stream up so they can get closer to EFAP. But EFAP sort of had a sort of blanket policy that sort of shot them down here, trying to weasel Southpaw's disagreement with EFAP to sort of expose it, talk to them. Then when it didn't give them any results, who cares about Southpaw or SK here?
Of this, if we're like approaching you with a little bit of kind of,
well, I mean, you also like challenge people to debate you, right? So I mean, you've got people that are
sorry, do they? Does Dane ever? Oh, you're gonna get Eduardo and Bob here giving their honest, but does that even happen? I guess Ed might be the only one who's continued that, and I don't know how well he does with that. I think he just has, if you see Grey Poupon's streams covering it, yeah, it doesn't turn out well for Eduardo here. And even Bob shut that shit down. Probably at Dane's advice.
Are willing to at least have this conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on who it is. I really don't. I personally don't want to just debate anyone. I'm all about like responsible platforming, so it depends on context. But
I will debate anyone.
Yeah, I debate. I'm wildly
just reach out to me.
I think even when I covered Mahler, I said it in that video. Like, I don't really like the way he reviews things, but it'd be fine. My only real issue is that he calls it objective. That's it. Like, if he just did it for fun, and that's, I enjoy doing movies this way, then have fun, man. It's, go for it.
Do you think?
Yeah, that's probably the most we're going to get from Bob. See, this shows what his problem with a lot of these critics are. They don't seem to be having enough fun with it, I guess. Boys just want to have fun. As Bob is resorting to a freaking laissez-faire, have fun with it. And if you're not having fun with it, if you don't like it, why are you talking about it? Why are you using Why are you bringing up Ghostbusters 2016? Why are you bringing up Men in Black International? Yeah, they were bad. Thank you both, Andrew and Gray, for sort of exposing to me more to Bob, but I'm hitting them from Bob and Dane from their own side, and that nerd argument debate / discussion with Bob was just priceless.
I think that the objective thing, that basically that is that where the, you know, kind of the mob mentality, the almost cultish mentality in this, you know, the harassment and everything, is that just necessitated from the objective thing? Like, is that just hand in glove?
Sir, I think there's actually a bit more than that that I could talk about. I also think it comes from their tendency to vilifying creators in one way or another.
That.
Yes,
I know.
And I think one of the most well, two of them actually, two of the most prevalent examples of this is probably Ryan Johnson and Zack Snyder. And
okay, I don't know why they're saying, yeah, Zach, I can agree with. I think they went a little over the line bringing up some things about Zach. But Ryan Johnson, they don't vilify him. Everything they criticize him for typically is the one draft and his arrogant attitude and not really taking up criticism. Zack Snyder, yeah, they do. But, and SK has a point here, but he also doesn't have a point because obviously he doesn't understand how entertainment works. The crowd tends to like sports, okay? Root for the home team. And maybe Snyder did something. It brought up in Dane's video of him disassociating from Geeks and Gamers and disavowing that. I'm not going to speculate on that, but frankly, Snyder is quite a difficult beast. I can partially agree, but I can understand why EFAP would do that to a certain extent.
He just tried to vilify Snyder and be like, yeah, he's lying about his vision. He's lying about what was originally going to be there or what his intentions were, to make him out to be like this dishonest person in response to everything he went through, the hell he went through just to make this movie. I think that's kind of, especially.
It seems like SK is taking this very personally, and I still have not seen that sort of debate. They're holding that back. Damn you, Patrick and Gray, just teasing that sort of debate between Patrick and Dane here.
With the personal tragedy involved and
debate, I'm sure.
Treatment. I think it's insipid. And I think it's embarrassing.
I'm thinking SK is just making way too big of a deal of this. He's taking it too personally, obviously, because he has a hard on for Snyder. No, okay. Let me not go that far. That'd be like saying something really bad about SK. And as much problem as I have with a lot of SK's conduct, extreme political beliefs, and all that some stuff, maybe he just is highly empathetic. Yeah, sure. Best case, Steel Man. SK feels really strong towards Zack Snyder. This is why he has such a visceral reaction. I can't say that word worth shit towards any hostility or implication that Zack Snyder was lying about his vision.
He actually put that out, and people.
The implication there is that he should have done 100% 1-to-1 whatever he had in his mind years prior. Otherwise, he's a liar. Like,
yeah.
I mean, people in the gaming industry does this with like Todd Howard all the time, and I can see their point with that. There's a certain amount of leeway that should be put on a creator when they say, like No Man's Sky, saying all these things. Yeah, a lot of this is marketing, a lot of high hopes and hoping to introduce them into the game. And of course, Zack Snyder probably had high ambition, but to totally say the hype, he tried to market it incorrectly with all this, and later it turned out to be something different. Fans of this and even critics will want to factor this in. Is it the whole argument that EFAP uses, or should I say Mahler, since he did the Snyder cut? Shit. Yeah, there is a amount of weight to it. It just adds to the pile of list of what they think sort of contributed to sort of the Snyder Cut. I'm thinking this is the case that SK is talking about, to sort of dim it somewhat. Maybe Snyder shouldn't have done the Snyder Cut. I mean, I don't like either version of that. I don't even know which one's better. It's just too hard to tell for me.
Like literally, his argument was, oh, a trailer had a line that he cut, even though that happens all the time.
I was actually, I was closely enmeshed with the EFAP guys during the DC arc where we were going through all the DCEU movies. And I didn't edit the video or really help write it, but I was part of his initial reaction to watching the movie. Like he uploaded his first time watching the movie with all of his friends, and I was in there, and I provided a lot of arguments that he did use in that video, some of which SK has responded to, which I personally don't have like much of a counter argument for. A popular one might be the Darkseid forgets Darkseid's forgetting the planet that has the anti-life equation.
Okay, since I have a chat, give me your opinion on this if you know about this. This seems like on face just so dumb. I would have to rewatch it. This seems like such a dumb argument from SK here. And I don't know how Southpaw does not have a counter to this. It's just so stupid. Maybe it's just so stupid it's impossible to counter it, maybe. Just listen.
And SK and his friends brought up a good point of like, well, the mother boxes are apparently the manner in which he's able to traverse the multiverse. And then I'm thinking about this as like, well,
led Darkseid over to Earth.
Yeah,
that's for the anti-life equation.
So then I'm like, okay, so the analogy here would be if you find treasure, right? You find a thing of treasure and you write it down on a piece of paper so you remember where it is, like the coordinates, right? But then that piece of paper, the manner in which you did your due diligence is lost. At that point, then, you forget.
Did Darkseid's army completely get decimated? Is no one in the entire army going to remember any of this at all or give more hints to it? This is why the piece of paper metaphor just doesn't work for me. And he goes more into it. It seems rather complex.
What the coordinates are, or you lose the coordinates if you lose that piece of paper while you're leaving the cave, or especially if you're damaged.
Yeah, and the only thing I see, because I also bring up, he didn't have time to back all this up. He had to leave the planet because he was losing miserably. The main thing I see in response to that is, oh, well, why didn't he prepare beforehand in case something like this happened?
Yeah, did the ships not have records of the coordinates? Did all the ships get damaged or destroyed? Is that ever established? I mean, this is just such a stupid argument to me that I would have to go back and double check all of SK's sort of autistic criticism. I know a lot of his criticism, because I tried to watch it recently, the Infinity War one seemed at face value very stupid to me, but I'm not going to say anything on that right now because I need to watch it again. Maybe a video, maybe a stream covering that. Who knows?
And it's like, he doesn't preemptively do this because he's fought for thousands of years, never lost, never had to worry about losing. I think that's a good enough reason for him not to be very careful.
No. Yeah, okay, maybe it's a good reason for him to not to be careful, but for all the information to be wiped or not in the computers, what? Do they not have computers on these starships that go across? Okay. Not going to get into this right.
He doesn't think he needs to be, and there's a reason for that. And it's...
a lot of arguments come down to, like, when arrogance is an acceptable excuse. That's one of my first interactions with SK was arguing over Spider-Man 2 and Doc Ock. We literally argued in a live stream about Spider-Man 2. I was on the anti-Spider-Man 2 side in this debate, and he tried to argue that certain decisions that Ock made were covered by arrogance, and I was fervently arguing. I would still fervently argue the opposite. I would even agree at this point. And again, we liked Spider-Man 2 and we'll praise it compared to other things. But I think SK would agree with me. It's not a well-written movie if you want to go by this.
Yeah.
Examining like just too much into the weeds.
That's way more my focus on when I watch movies. Like, kind of like with the Raimi Spider-Man films, I don't feel like the logic of the plot is what matters. It's the feeling, the experience of watching and being with Spider-Man kind of thing.
Yeah, okay, Dane, perfectly valid to actually feel this way, but you should not impose your standards on other people. EFAP, as much problems as I have with them, not too many problems, but a couple here and there. They don't try to do that, and you're making the argument that they should just abandon their standards. Why don't you abandon your standards, Dane? Bob, Eduardo, why argue over this? Not that you do nowadays, but why even try to argue against this, especially when you don't even go into the detail? Devil's in the detail, and you're sadly all lacking in that. As much as I want to criticize SK and Southpaw during different things, it's not their problem that they won't go into the detail, at least.
And I think it's what Raimi excels
That's
at.
fine for you to say.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine for you to say. People were absolutely saying the same of the Star Wars sequels in the original trilogy. I committed a long time ago to plot logic matters and consistency matters, and I'm kind of having to dig a deeper hole now because of what I said there, and I'm having to admit to this. It's like, man, it's getting. I don't have to, no, but I want to anyways because I'm autistic.
Okay.
So,
dude, I'm autistic too. It's
self-diagnosed.
It's not an excuse. I'm autistic, so.
It is not an excuse, Dane says. SK was making a joke, okay? He wants to do this. And Dane is sort of like, it's not an excuse. Seems like Dane's trying to be like, you shouldn't be criticizing things this way. I think he's letting the mask slip. This whole conversation is obviously tiring and out, not automatically dismissing. This is my opinion. This is how it seems from watching this. I watched this a couple of times. That he's just really at wit's end dealing with so-called allies and not just using his generalization. You're just nitpicking, pedantic, white supremacists, and he can't really argue back against this, except for the Holocaust example. Dane would be a prime example of a Holocaust denier if it goes against his political belief. That is my belief.
You can make a choice. I feel like if they were just showing the screenplay going by on the screen, then that's really all you have to go on. But there's like a whole bunch of other elements that I feel like you have to take into consideration. But
I was literally arguing with someone earlier today.
Yeah, and Southpaw just moves past this, okay? Because what Dane said just makes no sense. He's trying to put down an argument. He doesn't even bring up the other elements because they're not getting into the examples. This is just general talk.
Who is trying to argue that you guys don't watch movies the way that most people do. And I'm just having to take a very deep breath because it's like, you're incorrect. They absolutely watch movies the way most people do because most people very clearly do not care about this, as evidenced by the popular stuff I've gone after that have the same issues as everything else you like to criticize in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, which again, most normal people did not actually care about. It's fine.
I will agree with this. Most people do not go into the devil in the details, critical analysis of these films and movies and all sorts of media. That's absolutely the truth, okay? But that's what sets apart the common viewer from a critic, in my opinion. You want to give your opinion, just talk about it as Joe Blow? Fine. I'm fine with that. You want to have it be a critic? You should actually have actual standards.
For you to care about, but don't fucking pretend that most people care about this when it's like it really clearly is not. There's very clearly they're not as anal about this as I am or as SK is. So we only have to go on Twitter to see how people are reacting.
Yeah, the paper analogy seems completely fucking stupid to me. If Southpaw wants to be like, I have no arguments against it, fine. SK is his friend. But God, it hurts my
those
head.
Things and seeing like, well, yeah, they're still popular movies. Sorry, Eduardo. Right. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. No, I do have a quick question because you did mention earlier that these guys specifically have a problem with Rian Johnson and Zack Snyder. Do do you believe that, you know?
No, SK said that. Just clarifying. SK made that claim. It's an unproven claim. I can say they definitely go with the sort of setup that the villainous or stupidity. Ryan Johnson makes more sense than Snyder, in my opinion.
So when Mahler and I think it was Fringy, when they went to join you to watch Terrier, do you think they were aware that Ryan Johnson was involved with the show, and do you think that informed how they acted towards you or their attitude towards the show?
And look where Ed contribution to this discussion. Oh, Ryan Johnson was part of Terriers. You think that? Let's see how Southpaw answers.
So I have okay. So two things. They did not invite me to watch Terriers with them. I invited them to watch Terriers with them. Right. I just have to clarify that. I don't know. So what I do know is that I went through the show with a mutual friend of theirs first, Wolf, and I watched through most of the show with him. I think I watched every episode after 6 with him. And in episode 5, I remember he's like messaging me as he's watching through this thing. I'm like, oh, by the way, did you notice you directed episode 5? He's like, no. And so I showed him it was Ryan Johnson, and he couldn't believe it. But it's like, well, he didn't write it. He just simply directed it. And Ryan Johnson, even if you don't like his writing, is a really good director. And so I don't think that that's really.
Yeah, I'll even say it myself. As a writer, Johnson sucks balls. Okay, literally, I don't respect his writing style at all. But as a director, this is why I think he is good at making films. Why he gets so much praise. Because he is good at directing films, making them work, flow rather well, even if the script is rather nonsensical. That might be a specialty, nonsensical stuff. And for him just to want to do it and not improve, I think it's a flaw. It's going to show up in his work later on. We're sort of seeing it with some of the Glass Onion, Knives Out stuff. I really think that is a decline from his earlier work.
What they, and this is the thing, I don't think Mahler and Fringy themselves would do this because Ryan Johnson directed 2 of the best episodes of Breaking Bad ever, right? Okay. Including Ozymandias, which is probably the best one ever, right? Yeah. He didn't have anything to do with the writing itself, so he's just directing someone else's scripts. Now, that having been said, again, I just want to distinguish here. Mahler and Fringy and their friends, the figureheads of EFAP, they are a separate entity from what certain folks in the EFAP community are like. And SK has seen people trying to criticize Ozymandias because Ryan Johnson was involved with that. And yes,
I've seen somebody coping with it. They just learned that that he directed episodes of Breaking Bad, and like after they'd already loved the series, right? They're like, I just learned that Ryan Johnson directed some episodes. I don't know how to feel about it.
No. Okay, this is a funny moment. I'll give all of them credit for this. I'm sure this does happen to some sort of debate brain. Root for the home team. Ryan Johnson can't do anything good just because he destroyed. People should be more against J.J. Abrams. He both did. Frankly, I think his start with the Star Wars sequel trilogy was actually more detrimental. Who knows? I mean, Ryan Johnson really screwed the pooch on that. And he also fucked over Star Trek, in my personal opinion. I mean, the first one was watchable. It had serious problems. And from there, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to watch this. He's just doing too much. Oh, so bad.
This was not how it was supposed to go.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you as someone who agrees that these are guys who have biases that they don't tend to check themselves. I don't think that they would go as far as to purposefully misconstrue an entire TV show because one of the guys who directed one episode and had nothing to do with the writing directed it. I don't believe that at all. That could be a very subconscious bias. That's like I'm entertaining that as a possibility. I don't think that's the case.
I tend to agree with you, but it actually makes me think of another, I think, an interesting element to EFAP compared to other guys that we tend to cover around here. They do seem to like genuinely believe in what they're saying and doing. Even if it is misguided, wrong, and
Okay, just gotta pause. They genuinely think, even if it's misguided and wrong, how the fuck would you know, Dane? everything you've been doing over the years seems to be misguided and wrong. But you know what? You got to put that caveat before you saying they're genuine. And it's something that probably SK and Southpaw might disagree with down the line. Don't even know about that.
Not self-aware, you know what I mean? Compared to like,
not self-aware
geeks and gamers, nerdrotic and stuff. Like, there's definitely a grift element there. And it's just something I've been noticing just really in the last, month or so since I've been, talking to you and looking at EFAP a lot more. That it's just notable. What do you think?
I think that there's a lot of hypocrisy that and double standards and lack of principles that you can point out in certain areas, and
Sure.
The whole saga involving me is like a crystal clear example of this. But when it comes to comparing them to like geeks and gamers or nerdrotic or heel versus babyface, they're absolutely a lot more genuine than those guys are. I think they do believe in what they say. I just think that when they're biased, again, it's just a matter of, well, they're humans and humans have biases. So when it comes to something like Captain America Civil War, clear-cut example of this is a guy impersonating a doctor who actually exists and he doesn't have a disguise. And it's like, well, we wouldn't accept this in Mission Impossible where we know Ethan Hunt would need to make a disguise. But even though we've pointed this out to these guys, they've just ignored it. And they're like, well, I believe that it's possible. And it's like, that's not a really strong argument, but I don't think it's being.
Yeah, that would not be an example of objective criticism. So they do break away, EFAP. But what they selectively focus on, that's a matter of thing. Southpaw definitely does bring up this fact, and I probably on just the dumb viewer setting wouldn't notice this, but frankly, by their standards, they really shouldn't let something like the doctor just getting in so easily. Oh, so you don't think Dane's given this level of charity since this interview? Yeah, I mean, these guys are allies, supposedly allies. They have to butter them up. You can't go too hard on them. Yes, play nice. Maybe even told Bob and Eduardo to not do their normal antics. I don't know. Again, speculation. But it is definitely an example that Dane can sort of be good faith. It still is loading a lot of things in here, if you notice. Like the autism thing, you can change that. The Holocaust example of denying that because emotions, you can't compare the Holocaust to media. I mean, maybe a bad comparison, but it is definitely a big bomb to really understand how you accept objective criticism in the world.
Maybe because they don't believe in what they say. I just think like they've got a personal attachment to Civil War that they aren't reconciling with, and they aren't squaring away, and so they'll just try to justify this and say, well, that's just not as bad as these other things here, even if like Eskin, I would argue it's one of the worst plot holes that we've seen.
Like I told you before that like I didn't really think of, I probably did notice it on some level before because I've seen the movie several times, but until you pointed it out the way you did, I hadn't really put thought into it. And it doesn't change how I feel about the movie, my take generally is like if the movie's doing enough good things around something like that
yeah, I mean, I understand. I think I can't ignore this. Like with The Force Awakens, even though everyone liked it when it came out, I had foreboded feelings. Same thing with Civil War. I couldn't identify it. Sometimes your brain can operate on two different levels. Sometimes you even subconsciously, these objective things about these films can affect you even when you're not nitpicking. I'm sure it's different for different people, and Dane is all in his rights to not let these facts, and most people shouldn't.
That I'm like don't notice it or that it doesn't bother me as everything else is going on, then I tend to give a movie credit for that. Which maybe is like being a little too lenient for films, but whatever.
Well, I hope that
it's too lenient as a film critic. I would agree. If you want to get into the critical issues, you should point them out and how the movie sort of hides that fact. Like even with the knife scene, most people didn't notice that. I didn't even notice that, at least consciously. Of course, I didn't even watch The Last Jedi, thanks to The Force Awakens sort of disappointed me so much. But yeah, you can hide those facts, and I don't know if they should be admirable or. I mean, you get tricked, and you're going to feel betrayed. I think that's how people feel with the subversion sometimes. And some people don't want to be bored. They expect things, and they're like, "Oh, it's not like what I wanted," and they just clap like seals. Oh, I hate how Rags goes, but sometimes, in some cases, I have to agree with Rags sort of assessments as harshly as they go along.
At least demonstrates like this is how deeply SK and I go into this stuff. It's like these are things that you might not even think about, that the EFAP guys didn't even think about when it came to this movie. But no, we when we're digging into something, we're digging into it really fucking hard. And we'll find things that may go unnoticed to a lot of people, and maybe in terms of like, oh, the themes or the tone or whatever, like, yeah, the movie does a great job at pulling a magic trick on you and making you not notice these things. But in terms of like what this affects and how much of the story is hinging on this, is like, oh, this is way more disastrous than a disappearing knife. This is way worse. But again, fine if you still think the movie is really good. It's just that we know that the EFAP guys would rip into anything else that had this issue. But they're giving us a pass in Civil War. Again, largely because I think that they're just biased towards that movie, more so than they have like a conscious double standard that they know about but don't care about. I don't think that's the case. I just think it's this weird subconscious bias thing.
I just want to address something real fast. Adam?
Well,
yeah.
Adam? Sit down. Like the stream. You might learn something about EFAP. Enjoy.
Yeah, I had to add this bit as a true Stitch and Adam fan, but I disagree with Adam. But this is obviously like, oh, what's happening? Why is Southpaw? Obviously, he's out of the loop also, and he catches this and like, what the hell? Bob, so demeaning.
What happened? Why Southpaw backstabbing EFAP?
He
didn't
how he always shows up and has
it's Adam. He always likes to pop up and defend.
And he's always like immediately taking a
fair.
side. So it's like he's not really here to listen.
How is this even picking a side? Or is SK backstabbing? I can't say who's talking. He's not picking a side. Disappearing knife, he's confused and being a little trolly. I understand this. And you get something interesting out of SK out of this interaction.
To what's being said, he's just like, this is the wrong person.
No, Dane, he is here to listen. So, Adam, sit down, listen, enjoy. You'll learn something about EFAP. We're here to learn about EFAP. So, Southpaw, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. I feel like when you guys have been leveling certain criticisms of EFAP, I've been doing a good job at like clarifying, no, you're wrong about that, and here's why.
Yeah.
I have criticisms of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think it's unfair. It's like, okay, you're allowed to have criticisms of Star Wars and to criticize Star Wars when you have issues with Star Wars. And I mean, yeah, if you've seen SK's video, you might know why I might have issues with these guys. I still value accuracy, though. I still value people being correct. And sometimes these guys, this is just a matter of ignorance, right? You guys weren't closely involved with them, and SK and I were at one point. So we have better knowledge of this than you guys are going to have. And I'm willing to talk about this. But
that's why we have been communicating with you guys, because we know that. And like
trying to get the real dirt, trying to get their deep dark secrets. And Southpaw is keeping it real. He's like, we know about this. Well, Southpaw says he was deeply. I don't think he overhyped SK's involvement with EFAP. Don't know about that. I don't know the down dirty details. I just don't think SK was a true part of the group, where Southpaw sort of was getting into it. I mean, it's fine to have a certain level of respect for Mahler. And I agree that Southpaw might not be 100% honest here. I think he's trying to balance act between being completely honest and also trying to represent what he sees as the truth correctly. Because it's found out. He made a claim about Wolf, which could be incorrect. He thought Wolf leaked a certain thing when he It's found out it was probably someone else from that Discord message that he sent. Well, I don't know about that. Mahler's absolutely willing to admit he has his take on The Last Airbender, Avatar The Last Airbender, which goes over like a lead balloon. And in reality, if you take a look at terriers, his criticism against terriers seems really bad and very biased. But yeah, I'll agree. It's just hinging on the fact that he's relying on Fringy's supposedly expertise on the law. Don't know that. That whole shit is a mess that I will not try to get involved in. But I can see where both sides are coming from in that case.
And really, I think we've been communicating, and we wanted to have you on here because of the things that we agree on more than anything else, which I think are the things that really matter, right? Like, human beings, actual human flesh and blood human beings that get harassed, and you two being two of them, as well as some of the other problematic ideas that EFAP is kind of seemingly proponents of, or at least their audience is.
Yeah, I don't blame anyone for not getting into the whole terriers fiasco. It's and SK and Southpaw do not help their case by just perpetually antagonizing certain people on Twitter, in my opinion. I mean, they're trying to have humor with it, but it's just horrible optics how they're going about this, in my opinion. Oh, shit. I don't even know where I was.
Slaughterhouse, you guys don't understand that.
I respect that.
At least their audience is.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into that whenever.
Yes, it's interesting seeing that dude saying Southpaw has a hate boner for EFAP. Is like, listen to what I'm actually saying, dude. I don't think that I'm just hating on EFAP for the sake of it. I feel like I'm doing the best.
Very well balanced, yeah.
It just seems forced.
See, Southpaw is mischaracterizing Adam Frende here, in my personal opinion. But I can understand why his bias of someone coming in and sort of Dean egging it on along with Bob, a distortion of what Adam Frende said. I like the sort of section. You should just listen to what he's saying. And I believe Southpaw is the most honest actor out of everyone here, at least.
First of those guys.
There it is. Yeah.
That's just the unfortunate well, this is what I really want to encourage, right? Is actual critical thinking. Don't just echo what you're being told. Actually listen to the arguments that are being made, why people are making those arguments. Ask clarification questions, and don't just jump to why are you backstabbing? Why are you doing yada 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 yada? That's based on bad faith or worse faith interpretations. Maybe ask, why are you doing this? Don't do these leading questions that you're doing, Adam. Sorry.
See, this is where I think he's wrong. Just Adam's out of loop. There was question marks on each one of them. Leading questions, maybe Southpaw here does not seem to understand Adam coming. Maybe he should have stayed longer. Maybe he should have listened. I don't know. Adam's a busy man. He's sort of a troll. Who knows his thought process here?
No, he knows as much about being honest as he knows about fucking producing a screenplay, by which I mean jack shit.
Well, I know jack shit about writing a screenplay.
Yeah, but you don't call yourself a screenwriter like Adam Frende does over here.
You don't show up in
you
people's
call
chat.
yourself a one-man sacred cow slaughterhouse.
I'm a one-man sacred cow slaughterhouse. You guys don't understand that.
I respect that. I respect that.
As well as some of the other problematic ideas that EFAP is kind of seemingly proponents of, or at least their audience is. Yeah, we'll get into that whenever.
Yes, it's interesting seeing that dude saying Southpaw has a hate boner for EFAP. Is like, listen to what I'm actually saying, dude. I don't think that I'm just hating on EFAP for the sake of it. I feel like I'm doing the best.
Very well balanced, yeah.
It just seems forced to those guys.
There it is.
That's just the unfortunate well, this is what I really want to encourage, right? Is actual critical thinking. Don't just echo what you're being told. Actually listen to the arguments that are being made, why people are making those arguments. Ask clarification questions and don't just jump to why are you backstabbing? Why are you doing yada 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 yada? That's based on bad faith.
Southpaw Lupin, or did I?
Maybe ask.
I don't know.
Why are you doing this? Don't do these leading questions that you're doing, Adam. Sorry.
No, dude, he knows as much about being honest as he knows about fucking producing a screenplay, by which I mean jack shit.
Well, I know jack shit about writing a screenplay.
Yeah, but you don't call yourself a screenwriter like Adam Brendan does over here.
You don't show up and you call yourself a one-man sacred cow slaughterhouse.
I'm a one-man sacred cow slaughterhouse. You guys don't understand that.
I respect that. I respect that.
I do think that gender and sex are inextricably linked.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was my fault. I must have redid that twice. But yeah, he wasn't looping. I accidentally looped that there. Ta-da! But yeah, before they get into this, I think Adam sort of prompted a very good talk. You should listen to people and not just assume that you're the person like Mahler or anyone or fans who mislead, just mischaracterize, should listen to the arguments, hear them out. But there is bad optics that's going to keep a lot of people out. And I think SK especially, and even Southpaw to a certain degree, like the hyperbolic criticism or clarification of some of his criticism that I've seen he's sort of come back from. And, you know, you need to listen, hear it all out. And this is sort of where this stream gets really starting to get off the rails. You'll see it.
I do think that both of the genders, while there are two, there is in a vast spectrum, but I don't really care about it all that much, honestly. If you want to be whatever, that's fine with me. If you want to be whatever gender you want, that is totally fine with me. You do your thing. You go out there and be the best, whatever you want to be. That is totally okay with me. Just don't tell me that I have to call you certain things or I have to label you as something or something.
Okay.
The top comment.
Can we stop there? Can we stop there? Mm-hmm. I want to just say exactly what he said, but replace a few words. You can be whoever you are, whatever skin color, whatever nationality, whatever. Just don't tell me I have to not call you certain things like Negro or stuff like that. Just don't tell me I have to respect, like let you sit at the same lunch table as people of.
Okay, this part always pisses me off. SK is doing such a fucking disingenuous, fucking false equivalency here. You not using a word, you're being forced. And social conditions forces people to not use those slurs. This is completely disingenuous and false framing here. And I'm probably going to have a little bit more rant after he goes on about this freaking dumb switching of the words. Very dishonest. I don't think SK is being dumb here. He's just being dishonest or delusional here.
Other skin colors, or the same water fountain, whatever. That's what you sound like.
If I tell you my name is Dane and you keep calling me fucking Frank, then I'm gonna think you're an asshole, and I'm not gonna want to be around.
Yeah, you can think someone's an asshole for using the wrong pronouns, but SK's fucking little. See, this is where it really pisses me off. SK,
right? Like. Or when someone gets married and takes their spouse's last name, if someone kept, it's like there's not really any functional difference. So there's something else going on there. It's bigotry.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
12,000 upvotes. The fact that they played Duel of the Fates, Anakin's Dark Deeds, and Battle of the Heroes is insane. Instant chills right there.
There you go.
Fuck off.
What's the issue?
I don't even care if you're a nice person.
Okay. Can we pause there?
Pause. Yeah.
That's
two things.
That they cannot accept people enjoying shit that they don't like.
Yeah.
That's proof that.
Well, I think you're going to use that example again. Using Rags as an example of an objective critic is fucking disingenuous. Rags is sort of he has some objective qualities to him, but out of all the fat guys, even among this panel, I think JXE has more objective standard than Rags. Rags is the insult comic. He's got some good points here and there, I mean, a lot of people shit on him for his Doom Eternal takes, him defending he didn't like the game, but it's very subjective. He brings up good arguments of why he thinks the way he does. But overall, he's the worst out of the objective critics. And for them to, they just don't understand insult or edgy comedy, I think. And that's really something that probably hurts Rags, that edgy comedy's so lacking.
I feel like, okay, the person that made that comment might be, their worst crime is probably just being easily impressed. Like, well, yeah, it's an Obi-Wan Kenobi show. It makes sense that they're going to add a couple of iconic themes from when he's fought people in the prequels. At the same time, they're not talking about the quality of the writing. They're just sharing what they experienced from them doing the member berries thing, which is like, it's not hurting me by you sharing that. And so getting angry at that seems bizarre. That's
also,
I understand the irritation that people have about the member berries. People just clapping because, oh, they did the thing. Like freaking the Transformer movies. They like got 10 lines from the original cartoon and just inserted it into Transformers. And they've been a lot of fan service. And you know what? Fan service is never bad. But when you're trying to cover for bad writing with just these fan service moments, there's a lot of examples in Disney's Star Wars throughout, like Mandalorian. I think these guys are a little bit too hard on it. I think the first season was passable. Wasn't the stellar thing everyone was going on. Had its problems. I'd have to take a critical eye to it myself. But yeah, fan service is at least an attempt to appease the fan. But when you cover up bad writing with it, I can understand why EFAP would be mad at that. At least Rags in this case, because he's been at this too long. Way too bitter of a man. Or doggo, I would just say.
I don't want to hear them talking about being easily impressed. When, remember Southpaw, you remember the bending over backwards they did to try to defend Ned being the reason we see Toby and Andrew and how that was done.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't want to hear it from these guys. I feel like they just seem to morally condemn people for liking something or thinking,
just being a fan of
something
something that they deem they don't like.
I think that is wrong. Sometimes they do get into the morals of things, like with Captain Marvel and with Wonder Woman 84, 82, whatever. Yeah, I think they do get into the morals a little bit too heavily a lot of places, but I think what SK is still ridiculous is saying morals. No, they do look down on these people who just be like, ooh, fan service, clap, clap, clap. And yeah, it can come off as asshole-ish, being an asshole. He's the asshole, EO, but the irritation just builds up. And you guys, fine for thinking Braggs is asshole. I think Braggs is asshole, but to think that he's morally thinking he's better, I think that's a little overreach.
Is somehow inexcusable.
Yeah. It's like they treat it like a crime.
And just the fact that they like cover much smaller channels, by the way, too. It's
this doesn't even work out. How often does EFAP even really cover smaller channels? Even back in the day, they tried to have when they were smaller, they covered smaller people and they stopped doing it. And Dane, looking from this day, bringing this point up, when they're actually getting into more about actual criticism instead of covering other people's videos. It's just disingenuous, delusional, maybe even dumb, ignorant. So all above for a lot of this shit.
Problem. And they seek out people that, it's one thing for them to, make a video about Bob or me or something like that because we're talking shit on them. It's like I would expect that, but going after some channel that's just talking about something they like and then picking their video apart and shitting on them, it's pretty fucking toxic behavior.
Absolutely.
No, I did not get any of my.
Okay. Because the reason I say that because I think
you know what I think is toxic. I think maybe aside, freaking Dane trying to be like talking about freaking Nerdette, she's so horrible. She used to be Gamergate. She defended this guy. No, it's not pedo. The stigma, blah, blah, blah. I think you, Dane, in this case, are definitely way more toxic. You just don't see it. Probably all above D, dumb, dishonest, and disingenuous, but maybe dilute it.
I remember a specific one where he's like, "You think that this show is good? You are pathetic. You need to reevaluate your life," or whatever the hell he said.
I feel the need to just clarify, for everything that SK and I are saying, we do not defend the show. At least I don't. I don't love Kenobi at all. I kind of hate it.
I do not.
It's irrelevant to this. It's
okay. I understand
it's irrelevant to this discussion about the
overhyped.
manner in which they talk to certain people. But we are not doing this because we love Kenobi. We absolutely do not. It's I think it's my least favorite Star Wars thing I've ever.
Oh, I just gotta laugh here. Southpaw is like, yeah, we're not defending Kenobi. Okay, we're not doing that. Definitely not. Oh,
watched. All I'm gonna say.
And because you don't like it, you're clearly morally superior.
I am. That's right. I'm a lot better than all of you.
I will say I suspect you haven't seen the holiday special though.
I actually have not.
Yeah.
The old
The Star Wars holiday
bringing
special.
some humor to that.
Okay.
It's bad.
All right. SK, you need to watch the Star Wars holiday special, and then after you do your whole OT video, you need to do a video on why the holiday special is the best of the original Star Wars.
Oh god!
To make a video proving that the holiday special is the best Star Wars thing ever. You have not
That
pissed
would be
enough
a
people
hell of
off
a
by saying that the
challenge.
OT
Holy
is
crap.
shit.
Machine for 5 seconds. Contribute something of substance, please.
Wow.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Kill yourself.
Oh,
I guess.
no.
I don't know.
Cool.
I don't.
This is rather lame comeback. Why they even? I mean, KYS. This is very low energy rags, and they're gonna rag on rags for this.
No, I don't care.
Okay, anomaly.
Also, I want to
Swallow a bullet.
out that misgendering trans people should 100% be considered inciting hatred against them on the basis of their gender. The only purpose in misgendering trans people is that it hurts them and incites hatred against them.
Riley, a lot of people are going to look at you and say, hey, it's a guy because you look like a guy. You have the body of a guy. You have the voice of a guy. The DNA in every single cell of your body is male. You can call yourself whatever you want. I don't care. But once you start telling other people that they have to call you certain things, that is obviously where they draw the line.
Okay, pause
I
again.
just gotta say,
Yeah, pause. What's forcing people to call you? That's called authoritarianism. Okay, that's called demanding someone call you something. That's pretty much authoritarianism that Dane here is perfectly fine with. Why is SK fine with this? Maybe he's a young, impressionable person. This is what I'm starting to think. Rewatching this for like the third or fourth time, SK seems to be very impressionable. This is why I think this comes up. Same thing with Eduardo, because he does something dumb after this and thinks it's okay. Maybe because of this stream even. This happened before the stream where Eduardo doxed rags. Just putting this into the timeline.
what an asshole. One.
Right?
Yeah.
What
Rags his asshole.
What his real name is, and then just refer to him as his real name and never call him Rags.
What do you mean?
Yep.
What do you mean?
With some nice music there. SK just uses Rags. Real name here. Eduardo. I didn't catch this the first time. It's going through until I knew about Rags' real name. I didn't process this. And Eduardo goes use his middle name. I edited that part out also just to be safe. But really, I think this is what gave Ed the idea of putting Rags' name in the title, which he later regret, which probably got him kicked out of the Fandom Initiative. You know, it's not official. They just parted ways. Yeah, so much bullshit. Bad optics. Dane will kick you out. Can't kick out Bob, even though he wanted to after that nerdette debate. At least that's my thought on that.
we're obviously.
Yeah, I don't care if it's not technically doxing. I don't care if it's just spreading a dox. It's just okay. The problem with this is okay. Yeah, misgendering someone, that's rude. Being an asshole. Okay, but the difference between misgendering, it's going to hurt their feelings. You dox someone, people can get that information. They can look up their home. Internet's crazy now. With someone's full name, you can look up a lot of things about them, or at least narrow it down to sort of go at them personally. Okay. The more equivalent to misgendering, why can't you just misgender some macho man, call them a she? Oh, did muscle She-Hulk? Am I pissing you off, She-Hulk? Or in Rags' case, just call him a bitch. It's both an insult and, if someone's smart enough, bitch is the female term for a dog. Okay, that's both misgendering. Go about, yeah, bitch. That's Rags' pronoun. Bitch, female dog. Rags is a female dog. Bitch. That's more the equivalent. Okay, going for something that can have possible harassment in the real world where they can't unplug is just ethically insane. And that's like completely crossing the line. I understand SK, maybe Southpaw was dumb to bring up that because SK, maybe he's just maybe he just gets influenced way too easily. I'm starting to notice this here. He goes along with people instead of arguing with them. Maybe he reflectively agree with his team, and reflectively just goes along with anything to disparage his enemy. It's just, I don't even want to get into his sort of counter debate with the Colin video. That was just horrible. Maybe I'll put something out about that. I don't know. It's just bad on SK's part.
We're obviously allowed to respect boundaries when it comes to what we prefer to be called. I mean, I think that some of you guys know what my real name is in here, but I prefer to be called Southpaw. And literally, even with people who don't like trans people, they have no issue with respecting that boundary. And this is just simply a boundary that costs you absolutely nothing to respect. Look, I don't know all that. SK is a lot more educated on the subject than I am.
But yeah, and this is where Southpaw fucking screws the pooch, where I can definitely just transferring his understanding of politics and social cues, because Southpaw's autistic. Maybe he doesn't understand this. Getting this shit from SK's completely insane. It distorts him from reality. Yeah, I mean, even to consider, he's right. Even some people don't like trans people, uses their pronouns. Some don't. Rags' argument is, when you try to get me to use your pronoun, I will reflectively not. Just to say, F you. Stop trying to control me. Stop trying to use laws to control my language. That's where I draw the line. I don't know why this is so hard for some people to understand. Maybe he's secretly a transphobe. Maybe he's not. He's bisexual. Who the hell knows? These sort of fucking things just go insane here. I'm sorry for that rant. This is just really pissing me off, this section here.
But I'm just on the side of just respect simple boundaries that don't cost me anything to do. This costs me nothing. So
I mean, no amount of dog costumes is gonna make fucking Rags a dog ultimately.
Well, and not only is it respecting someone's just boundaries and like not being a dick socially, but like you can find medical data information supporting the fact that that's the best thing to do for that person. So
I mean, if I mischaracterize Rag argument, that's fine. I agree with Andrew here. It's not about respect. It is about compelled speech. I do agree with that assessment. I think that's what he's talking about. I'm talking about the reaction to it reflectively. If someone wants to compel my speech, I'm actually going to do the opposite. And maybe if I respect the trans person, I will use their correct pronoun, the Jordan Peterson approach. But on principle, I think that's his Rags argument. I could be wrong. I don't think he's seriously a furry. He did a video mocking furries. Maybe he's a closet furry.
So
Who knows?
to do the
Son of
opposite
a
Chap
is
literally the guy that I spoke about earlier, Jolly Chap, is literally a neuroscientologist who like with a degree. I mean,
You say
Scientologist, they catch him.
neuroscience. Oh my god, neuroscientist. Oh my god. It's late.
I was gonna say,
Sorry. Neuro.
What did Xenu say?
Neuroscientologist. Jesus shit. He's
seriously fun.
He's
stuff.
got a degree in neuroscience, and he actually talks about in private.
I like that quote. Just be excellent to each other. Gotta love Bill and Dad. Just be excellent
about this stuff. And so it's like, again, this is a subject where I will just simply say, you know what? I'm not the best when it comes to talking about this. I'm not very qualified in talking about this, but I'll simply respect a person's boundary. It's not affecting me at all to just simply do that. It's costing me literally nothing, even if I just don't understand it. That's not a matter of saying it's not real. It's not a matter of me By the way, people getting really mad if you say it's nitpicking. They say that that's invalidating their criticism. Meanwhile, they're literally invalidating people's boundaries right here. But I'm just like, yeah, I'll just respect it, even though I'm not going to profess to know very much about it. That's it. That's basically my stance.
To go further,
I know a decent amount, and it's like objectively true that gender and sex are not the same thing, and so to conflate them and act like just because maybe you can tell or suspect that a woman was born a male, you're just. It's absurd. Like, you really have to go out of your way to be a dick to do that.
You say, well, we have to call you this. That's obviously where we're going to draw the line. It's like, okay, so if somebody demands that, if a black person demands that you don't call them clown.
Oh, fuck off, SK. You obviously understand. Maybe he doesn't understand the argument. I think he's genuinely delusional in this case. I don't think he's being dumb or dishonest here. I think SK is generally just delusional with this freaking take here. And he keeps on just conflating the trans issue with slurs for black people. And that is dishonest. Maybe he's being dishonest here, or maybe he's just genuinely delusional. I don't think he's being dumb here. And this is just really why I can't get behind SK, besides some of his pedantic arguments, which could be a extension of him trying to troll EFAP, like with the original trilogy. I mean, I laughed. I watched his little original trilogy. I know A Base Life was there also in chat to listen to some of those horrible arguments he made against the first A New Hope. And I'm like, okay, I get this. You're just trying to be a troll, but the line, some videos as a troll, that's just going to hurt your reputation to sort of slander EFAP. SK is really dumb and socially dumb, I think. So maybe it is all 4Ds.
Clown face or monkey or whatever. It's like
the N-word.
Yeah, or yeah. Do you not
hold on, SK.
Why?
A Base Life. It's called a fursona. Okay. I don't know how seriously Rags does take that. I don't think he is really a furry. He made fun of furries. He might play up that role for laughs, but Rags is generally a hard guy to read. He's definitely an asshole, but he's an asshole. I can respect it sometimes. Other times I'm like, okay, dude, you just this is lame too much.
Hey, do you not see why I'm saying, oh, well, you're demanding me not to say that? Like, so that's where we draw the line.
No,
do you not see like
no, SK, you're being racist by trying that comparison at all. Do you not remember when I brought that up?
Okay, Southpaw is clearly showing his autism. J Logbones, I think I've heard of this interaction, and I think she was just trying to troll him back. Maybe she was trying to use it. I don't know. Okay, but I'm glad they're diffusing this in a funny way. They're laughing about it.
To Jay Longbone for pulling this logic with Ezra Miller, a person who, by the way, I don't respect at all.
No,
but I'm not gonna misgender them on the basis of the pronouns thing, because then I'm just like, well, then what does a person who also uses they them pronouns think when I'm doing that because, oh, I don't respect Ezra Miller. It's like, it's not a matter of respecting Ezra Miller. It's a matter of respecting other people who are unrelated to this, right? That's like, you're doing a...
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that argument. One of you was in on Twitter about that. Yeah.
That was me.
Absolutely.
I think Caitlyn Jenner's a piece of shit, but I mean, I'm still going to try to use her proper name and pronouns whenever applicable.
Well, did Caitlyn Jenner ever demand laws be changed so you have to use her proper pronoun? No. In Riley's case, completely justified. Riley spouted a lot of bullshit back in the day. I think that's the pronoun she still goes with. Maybe she goes with the other ones. I haven't checked up on her. Some of her content rather bland now. Jack Saint's coming back into it, but let me drop this.
Well, I mean, if you're having to
be completely
if you're
honest,
doing that, you're just being malicious.
These people are subhuman.
There are reasons with both of these examples, Ezra Miller and Caitlyn Jenner, to criticize them that have nothing to do with their gender identity. And that's what they deserve to be criticized for, you know.
Well, there's literally a content creator that we're friends with who is trans, who I've accidentally misgendered just because I knew them before they were trans, and it really costs nothing to just correct oneself, be like, shit, sorry, that was unintended.
You'll sometimes get shit for that still, as it is proven. Just genuine slip of the tongue. Some people will get you to bullshit with that. Sorry, we're getting into the politics and their takes. I mean, yeah, I agree with Southpaw completely here. Sometimes you'll just slip up because of the mannerism, and they harp on this shit for way too long, make this way too big. Like 30 minutes was spent on this, and there's an hour more to go, which I'm probably not going to cover all of it tonight or period. I just want to get the bases out of the way here.
Intentional. Yeah, exactly. People understand that. People like there's no one is sending you off to the gulag for making a mistake, for making an innocent mistake. It still happens to me. And it's like, I think that this whole, like, you can't demand me to respect is like, that's a straw man. I'm always having to ask, like, when are they demanding you to call for you to call them?
Yeah, I do believe this is before Ezra Miller sort of ran off, kidnapped the girl, and they still put out his movie. So yeah, I think this is before Ezra Miller.
Anything unless you are outright refusing to do that.
You say, well, we have to call you this. You know, that's obviously where we're going to draw the line. It's like, okay, so if somebody demands that, if a black person demands that you don't call them clown face or monkey or whatever, it's like
the N-word.
Yeah, or yeah. Do you not see why? Or do you not see why saying, "Oh, well, you're demanding me not to say that"? Like, so that's where we draw the line.
No,
do you not see like
no, SK, you're being racist by trying that comparison at all. Do you not remember when I brought that up to Jay Long?
If you're having
to be completely
if you're
honest,
doing that, you're just being malicious.
Yeah, these people are subhuman.
Yeah, fuck off, SK. I think he's being serious with that. They sometimes joke about it. I don't think EFAP tries to be serious about this. They're very trollish in nature, especially Rags and especially Jay Longbone. And yeah, using that on an autistic person and try to make that as an argument. If you know someone's autistic and they'll take it the wrong way, especially when you're at odds, a little mean, but a lot of these arguments I don't like.
There are reasons with both of these examples, Ezra Miller and Caitlyn Jenner, to criticize them that have nothing to do with their gender identity.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up that example. You guys brought it up. Okay. Doesn't mean if these people demanded you use their proper pronouns, you'd be like, okay, I think you're crappy, but I'll use your pronoun. Not everyone has to hold your opinion, Dane. It's not going to be in the world misgendering these people. But doxing, you're completely fine with that.
Yeah, that's what they deserve to be criticized for, you know.
Well, there's literally a content creator that we're friends with who is trans, who I've accidentally misgendered, who's their certain pronouns or names or whatever that I'm unfamiliar with.
We respect, generally we try to respect boundaries with people in all these various other ways that we probably don't even.
Oh, fuck off, Dane, Uncle Tom, chunky monkey motherfucker. You don't respect someone, you don't respect their political views, you will demonize them. So don't say you'll respect. Bob here doesn't even understand freaking what libertarianism and libertarianism, yeah. And just castigate Eric July as a freaking bog standard. He's an NCAP. Eric July is an NCAP. That's different than conservative. He has thoughts. You might not agree with it, but don't just lump him in the freaking conservative category like they're all the same. What if I just lumped all leftists like communists? Dane might be fine with that, but other leftists would have issues with that. I don't do that shit. I mean, maybe it's a joke. Let me not
think about consciously. And then this one more is suddenly just, that's where the bridge too far for these people.
It's just the simple principle of treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yes.
And it's they teach you this stuff when you're a kid.
Right.
And Rags is like, what, 30 now?
It's so funny because I had an entire argument. I had an entire argument with someone that was mad over the whole the aforementioned. Well, it's not really aforementioned. This is the first time we're mentioning it. The whole consent thing, and like they were trying to pick a fight with me over it, especially like in regards to, well, what are you into? And I'm like, well, I mean, the youngest I go is half my age plus 7, and also in terms of like what do I care about? I was like, well, I mean, consent's really the only major preference that I have outside of, like, I mean, I'm not gay. And then this person tried to argue that because I only said consent, that somehow meant I was a pedophile. I'm like, you don't seem to understand that minors cannot consent. That's why I said consent.
Right.
Consent kind of covers like everything. Like we can.
I'm kind. I don't know. I'm kind of with the turfs. Not gonna lie.
That's a joke. Dang it, that's a joke.
So that's trans exclusive radical feminists.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, I can sympathize with that. I'm typically no friend of feminists, but I can sympathize with the turf.
The couple just so happens to walk into a room with a bed.
Yeah, isn't that the same exact joke Chappelle made? Not the same exact one. I don't think he really threw feminists under the bus. Maybe he did. I don't remember that. Might have to rewatch that. Sticks and stones won't break your bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
So the bigotry against trans people is greater than that against women is what that tells me.
Yeah, which is still pretty bad.
No, Rack seems like a really level-headed guy. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I'm going to abstain from much of this discussion outside of turfs are nobody's friend. Crazy shit that they say, like even if you're someone that isn't particularly enthused about the trans community, god damn, the shit that they just get away with saying about men. They are these straw feminists that anti-feminists hate all the time. But because they also hate trans people, the anti-feminists that I've seen seem to be siding with them. And I'm over here, I'm like,
no, not siding with them, saying, yeah, I can agree with this one particular point here because, I don't know why Southpaw is going into this. Obviously, he's completely unaware of the political game out there. He probably will disagree with most conservatives or even centrists like myself on this. It's more nuanced here. There's turf is a label placed. You could consider turf a slur. So Southpaw could be using this as a slur. Maybe not. I really think this is a misstep by freaking Southpaw here just to label them. There are turfs who clearly are transphobic and try to hide it. And there's other ones who are more against, again, the mislabeling thing, compelled speech. They're against that. They're against women actually coming into safe spaces for women. There are classifications like the women's sports issue. If if you can't even entertain that there's legitimate criticism for women, trans women winning all these sports, I don't know where you fall. You're just an ideologue, in my opinion, who entertains no thought. There's a lot of pushback that's coming. This is several months ago. I understand why Southpaw has this perspective, because that is the mainstream understanding, but it's not that simple, Southpaw. So I don't know if he's going to watch this. Who knows?
Like, again, I'm not very knowledgeable on the trans subject.
Yeah, so you shouldn't speak about it so much, especially since you're getting your info from SK.
Respectful towards them. And I've definitely taken a side here in terms of I'm against the TERFs. TERFs are not your friend. They are nobody's friend.
Oh, this is with black characters. Like every room they fucking walk in, just happens to be a racist cop, ready to put a knee on their neck, like they're treating.
They can die of a heart attack.
Go fuck yourself.
That's
Go
just
fuck yourself.
No,
Yeah,
that
go
was
fuck
literally
yourself.
my exact response.
So by the way,
when I first saw that. I was like,
so that person speaking was the person I was talking about earlier when I said they were going on about.
Yeah, probably edgy joke. Okay, there is some miscommunications. Definitely, a lot of the people. It's like Holocaust denial to say that maybe, just maybe, George Floyd had an overdose. And most people who even have that perspective will admit that definitely what Derek Chauvin did probably exasperated what Floyd was experiencing with his overdose and could have contributed to it. But I definitely a very edgy joke, just like with what shit. Yeah, likes edgy jokes. And I don't know what time frame this was. Is that never going to be? It has a certain amount of merit. And yeah, edgy joke tries to fit them in. To castigate him as a horrible person, yeah, okay, I can see. Definitely, you can say horrible people, but to say anything outside of he likes edgy humor, but to say this reflects their views on the world, it's a little bullshit and disingenuous, or just delusional. Could be just dumb also.
How, I don't have to respect Ezra Miller's pronouns because I don't respect him. And my response was like, well, because this person is black, right? I was like, well, just because I don't respect you doesn't give me the right to call you the N-word. And then this person literally responds to me. You want to give me just 1 second so I'm not paraphrasing. I don't want to paraphrase here, right? So I just want to clarify here. I'm literally saying it would be wrong for me to do this just because I don't respect you, right? And that's just purely an analogy. It's not me equivocating that like misgendering someone is just as bad as calling them the N-word. I never said that. But then this person.
Yeah, but pretty much SK did. And yeah, I'm getting into the ranting portion of this because they go off the wall on this. The IJP Mexican. Too bad Depressed Hydra is in here. You should check out his channel, guys. Some interesting stuff.
What I said there was, oh yeah, so her response was, so you don't use, in quotes, so you don't use someone's self-assigned pronouns, I can call you the N-word now, right? As a
You serious, Tinama? Vito has people in his community doing artwork of superhero killing kneeling on. Okay, well, he's a troll. Whoa. That is, I don't know, is that fucked up? I think that's fucked up. I mean, I don't take moral stances, but I think putting Izuma, Eric July's superhero, in the same position as George Floyd, that's definitely fucked up and extremely edgy humor. Wow. Sorry. Total aside.
To say that that's what I said, but if you look at her screenshot, I'm literally saying the exact opposite. And
oh yeah. In case that's a misinformation, I'll trust you on that. That some idiots might do that, and maybe even knows about it. But that does seem fucked up to me. Okay, and I try not to get into moral arguments, but I'll say that's fucked up.
And
yeah,
that's the person that just spoke here. She just lied. And and the EFAP guys knew about this, and they did fuck all to address this false accusation of racism, which I'm sure that the EFAP fans are.
Yeah, but maybe they didn't take it seriously. Maybe it wasn't a real, Southpaw. I understand why you agree, and some of the fan base probably will run with this narrative, but retard fans should not be listened to, in my opinion. You shouldn't let the trolls get to you. You're gonna have to learn to get a thick skin, and unless he does have a point here, okay, but as a content creators of almost any side, you got to learn how to deal with the trolls. It's just something personally. I mean, you can be like, this is fucked up. Maybe FAP knows about this. Maybe they don't. You can't say that. Maybe they're just trying to ignore this because they're annoyed with you, Southpaw. No offense. They have reasons to be. You have reasons to be pissed off at EFAP. But I think this is slightly I don't know about this one.
You know what they will defend? You know what they will defend, though? Someone in their No Way Home stream said Gary didn't like Ned from the movie, and they tried to attribute that to racism. And Mahler was very adamant on being like, no. He probably didn't find him funny, and that's perfectly fine. He was desperate to defend that, but
I can't imagine running to the defense of Gary.
I mean,
Gary,
it's entirely. I will say it's entirely possible the case that Gary just simply didn't like Ned because Ned sucked.
It is
Newsflash,
possible, but
Ned did suck.
Yeah.
Ned did
he's
suck.
He's got a track record though that would also weigh it pretty heavily in favor of it maybe not being that.
I will neither confirm nor deny that. I'm just going to say, the difference in his response there versus his response to when Jay Longbone is outright claiming I was racist when I'm literally saying it would be wrong to do a racist thing.
Yeah, I saw the exchange. It was
yeah, it's like that's just abhorrent. I guess that the EFAP fan base that cares so much if SK does quote unquote guilt by association, which we can go into later, I guess that just doesn't matter if it's someone that they disagree with that's getting called a racist.
Let me not even get into SK. I've also seen him endorsing doxing of smaller people. Okay. SK has his problems. Okay. I'm not even going to put that up. Just put it out there. I have a screenshot of SK endorsing some smaller content creators, putting their names out there.
For
Believe it
saying
or
the
not.
exact opposite things.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, at least I guess we can say that in that case.
Yeah. Of course, SK is going to be biased by Southpaw, and Southpaw is going to be biased by SK. Is Dane biased by his friends? I don't even know if he really has friends. You take a look at Dane's history, he's just gone through several different groups of using seems to be. I mean, I can't say Bob's much better. I don't think he uses. I think he just goes by the beat of his own drum, and he's following Dane now. Ugh.
Mahler was, sticking up for a friend. So
yeah,
that was kind of an underhanded.
Oh yeah,
room crashing scene is one of the most fun scenes in the MCU.
Fuck me, you will clap at anything.
Yeah, I'll agree with Andrew. Maybe Southpaw has too high of expectations because audience capture is a thing, and to say that the people of EFAP, even Mahler, is not subject to that denigration. Yeah, he does seem to expect Mahler to step up, but I don't think Mahler is socially aware enough to do that, or maybe he thinks it'll hurt. I don't know the deal with that.
But Rex is so big, there's so many explosions.
I like that scene in the second episode where the pig.
Well, here's the thing. I never felt like it was a tragic story.
Wait, did he call them pigs?
Did he?
What? Wait,
hold on.
He did.
The thing with Isaiah Bradley and how tragic his story is. I like that scene in the second episode where the pigs harass Sam.
Pigs. He called them pigs.
Pause it.
He called the
Pause
cops
it.
pigs.
Pause it.
Yeah.
First off, I just want to say I really hope that Shea Frillos makes a speedy recovery. That's Shea Frillos in this clip here, and he's gone through a very, very terrible catastrophe recently.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, he was in a car accident that actually killed his best friend and his brother.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And those were two. Both of them were actually contributors to his channel. They worked on his channel with him, and now he's in the ICU or he's recovering. He's fine. He's alive. but it's a really terrible thing he's gone through. I feel really bad for him for that. And then the second thing that's less important, but still, I'll just say Schaefer was base here. What he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. You're going to see the reaction from EF after this. I think it's overblown. If it's just a one-off, I looked into this. Yeah, this guy isn't hardcore. I think calling these particular guys pigs is adequate, and EFAP really harping on it. Maybe they're doing it for comedy, or maybe it's just Rags' sort of intuition with this guy. But Southpaw bringing up this is you're gonna see how it's gonna affect SK in just a moment.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember these cops being.
Sorry. Yeah, Bob doesn't really get into it. I think they also get into the emotional appeal. Yeah, if they criticize this guy, do you really give someone a pass because they have an argument? It's a very delicate balance here. I mean, if you're harassing him or sending people to harass him, something I don't think EFAP tries to do. Some of the more toxic fan base, I'm sure, might go to the video. Can't check that, can't.
Pretty outright racist.
I have to say is go fuck yourself to every single person in this clip. I think it's disgusting that they're actually trying to downplay the actual racism at play that the show's trying to communicate here.
Yeah.
And their response to that is,
yeah, but how was the racism in the show communicated well? Okay, this is a knee-jerk reaction. That's a little overblown from EFAP here. Could be for comic appeal or just general feeling about how the police are portrayed within this environment. Freaking SK is treating this like in the vacuum, and Rags is definitely really in tune with the atmosphere. If he feels like it's being harped on over and over again in media, which definitely was after the death of George Floyd, and SK fucking brings up the propaganda thing. I mean, I think that's really bullshit, especially with some of the propaganda videos I've seen out there. Illuminati with her propaganda bullshit. I've seen some horrible Paw Patrol freaking propaganda things that aren't even accurate from what I know. Just some bullshit around all that shit. And I don't know why they're bringing... Yeah, they get into this political talk. You had a half hour of actually looking at the objective criticism, and now it's just a shit on the political take of this. And this is
well, you can't call them pigs. Well, you'll see it gets even worse after this, but it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So they can go
for a second. I thought you were talking about the clip of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm like, what did they do?
No. I'm talking about Rags, Fringy, and Molar.
Okay.
That's great.
Wow. Okay. I'm sure. Wow. All right. Y'all need to just put your money where your mouth is and put yourself on a list so that whenever there's an issue, whenever you have a car accident, or if anyone ever mugs you, robs you, assaults you, whenever anything happens, you're just on a do not help list for the pigs, because
yeah, Rags definitely does generalize people, just assuming because this YouTuber said this, that they're totally against cops. And I think that's distracting too much. And by the way, he goes into this, all the guys go into it. I think it's a little bit too harsh, but I wouldn't be as cherry picking certain moments like this, not even looking at the material around, is just disingenuous in my personal opinion. Dishonest frame, and how often there would be much more moments that you could pick out if genuinely Rags had serious issues with it. Okay, maybe this is just hitting a certain button in the wrong way, and they might go off of it badly, but still,
this is the pigs helping you out. So whenever you need something, and you call,
this is absolutely dishonest. He knows this is
bullshit, and
he's
pretty
saying
disgusting.
This.
Yeah,
And this is the thing. People use this kind of disgusting rhetoric to.
Yeah, and people use the rhetoric the other way. As Andrew Clark, this is Rags recognize these cops are bad people, but calling them pigs is a bridge too far for Rags. Yeah, I'll agree. It's his subjective opinion. For people who talk about how you should value the subjective in criticism. They're just discounting probably the subjective perspective of Rags and the rest of these guys, just too out of hand. It's definitely a imbalance in the scales. Criticism shouldn't be objective, but morality should be objective. And I frankly find that sort of philosophy so much bullshit that everything's okay or nothing's okay. Well, that's a little bit bridge too far.
Beat around the issue of actual police brutality at play.
Yeah, you know who uses this kind of
in this
rhetoric?
case.
Right wingers. So like I've seen people try and say that Rags is apolitical, Mahler is apolitical. They're not whatever. It's like no. I mean, at least Rags, he is straight up a
He's
right
voicing
winger.
an alt-right mindset or justification.
Oh, fuck off, SK. You probably consider anyone right of fucking Bernie Sanders alt-right. Shoe on head. I hate fucking how leftists throw around the term alt-right because they can't judge actual alt-right. They probably think Eric July is alt-right.
Libertation here.
He shared there was that one tweet he had was like, just saying the N-word is fine online, just a whole.
You are completely misrepresenting this. He did not say it's fine to call someone the N-word. Within the context of that little Xander Hall thing, he's talking about the word, the N-word. Okay.
Just not harmful, even though.
Yeah, and then the last one was that Antifa.
But you find this harmful, right, Rags?
Organization. Yeah, right. This is somehow harming somebody to say this, on a fucking YouTube video about actors that are playing cops.
Well, hey, listen, I just simply don't respect these police officers, so I'm not going to call them what they prefer to be called. They probably prefer to be called cops, but I'm just going to call them pigs.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And that's a fine perspective to have, okay? Let Rags has his opinion on this. A little bit of a rant. I can't exactly see it. And if EFAP went after this guy about it, I don't think they probably would have, at least not the more sane ones. I can judge that, but the rest of this is just...
And no, it's like, well, what Shea Frillis is saying here is like, if you're paying attention, he's not calling all cops pigs. He's referring to these particular cops who are harassing a guy because he's black, and they don't realize that, or they're not doing a great job at arguing against the point that he's actually made. If they're doing a really great job at arguing against the point that he never made.
He's talking about fictional cops. Like, it's not like he's saying it about real cops that would actually have some role to play if he needed police. It's fucking absurd.
Yeah, in leftists like yourself, Dane, and SK will argue that cops' depiction in media will actually affect how cops are viewed in the real world. SK just agreeing with this with his propaganda stance is sort of bullshit, in my personal opinion.
Absurd.
Well, I think that his logic is that because Shea Frillis is calling these fictional cops pigs, that he must then be referring to all cops, including non-fictional cops. But that's not what Shea Frillis did. That's, again, a straw man of what Shea Frillis said. Shea Frillis, if Shea Frillis said, oh man, all cops are just bastards. All cops are, well, first off, I believe that all cops are bastards. Argument.
Yeah. SK? Fuck off. Sorry. I'm used to saying that to SK. Southpaw, not all cops are bastards. You should know this, okay? Are you just going with the hype with all this? I don't even know what to say about this. The cops are individuals, okay? Maybe he's trying to be funny here. Autism. I'm just going to move on.
Make that argument against me all you like. Don't do that to Shea Frillis, please. Also, leave Shea Frillis alone for now, for a long time. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I mean, it does sound, according to his personal tragedy, it would be suck, but he probably should be the fuck offline, not deal with this shit. Should be dealing with real life, and that's something content creators shouldn't be harassed. No one should be harassed online. Not even these guys should be harassed. Okay, I can criticize them and say their views are dog shit, and their interpretations of EFAP sometimes go off the rail to varying degrees, but yeah, personal tragedy should not exclude someone from criticism. Maybe you should have a little nuance, do a little bit more research, but yeah.
Sincerely hope you get to speedy recovery. I had no idea about that.
But
I
yeah,
forgot
like,
how bad
even
this
without
got
a lot
too.
of even without a lot of the stuff that we've looked at already, I think this alone is enough for me to be like, I wouldn't watch these people anymore. They're idiots and they're just subhuman.
A lot of these clips that we're watching right now are almost the only things I've ever seen from EFAP. I've never watched an entire,
Okay, yeah, of course. Makes sense. You judging EFAP based off of these careful cherry pick clips. Of course, you would get a certain perspective of that. But that's your whole history, Dane. Okay, even Bob ain't much better. Him skipping around Mahler's video like he did in such a looking for problems, not finding them, and just giving some bog standard long man bad shit like that. I mean, I'm hoping to get some pushback from Southpaw, but it seems to be going with the crowd here, which I can understand.
Review or whatever the fuck. Yeah, everything I've seen has been snippets, and
it's not uncommon for them to be like this.
How much content they make, it's hard to say.
Yeah, SK's. I mean, EFAP uses that term, so maybe SK's just using their own terminology against them. Not gonna be, SK calling them subhuman is a breaking of his own values. When Rags uses that, not really. He's more edgy. He sometimes uses humor, very dry humor, which misinterpreted by fucking delusional people like SK here when it comes to politics, at least. Even with some of his reviews.
Say that this is what they're always like, that this is all that their content is. But there's not a shortage of it. I can tell you that much.
And it's never anything that they address later on is like, yeah, we could have, we're a little irresponsible.
Never addressed.
Southpaw. This is not representative of the majority. This is representative of maybe 1%. And a lot of that is going to be Rags here.
Anything like that, yeah.
At least Rags, who incites a lot of this sort of talk, because they join in.
I mean, it's a common pattern for them to screw up on something and not address it afterwards.
What are you talking about, SK? I don't know what on earth you could be referring to there.
That would almost, it would kind of just show that they're not infallible, which they can't have that.
We're something of disingenuous pieces of shit ourselves.
He's responding to Jack Saint's video on him. By the way, Jack Saint did a couple of response streams to that EFAP and with Patricia Taxon. Jack and Patricia did a fantastic job at breaking down that EFAP and actually showing off to me and SK and a few others like, oh, their comprehension skills are shit. Or like the whole EFAP.
Or they're just lost.
I tried to watch that. I didn't see it. I didn't watch the whole thing. Maybe I should go back for it. But frankly, I watched at least an hour of that. Just what's live streamed, not if Jack Saint. That video was pretty bad. They didn't go into details. So I really don't agree with Southpaw here, but he's biased against EFAP. So maybe I almost wanted to go into Jack Saint fighting with Shad, but there was misrepresentations on both sides from what I saw between Jack Saint and Shad about the woke Mario. That's too much of a mess to actually dive into properly. Didn't like Shad's response, didn't like Jack Saint's response either. Both can be bad in different ways.
I think they're lying
riddled.
personally.
Well, they're just riddled with issues, right? But the arguments that they are trying to make in that EFAP is like, well, if you apply the same standard of, well, Jack Saint is attributing something that Mahler technically never said here. That's what they try to say in that EFAP. It's like, well, technically, Schaeferless isn't making the point that you guys are responding to here. And the problem is that SK and I, of course, are also dealing with what's an unfortunate side effect of what they're doing here, where their fans turn off their critical thinking when listening to anything in criticism of them. And instead of addressing the points that we are making directly, they respond to things that we never, ever said.
Okay, yeah, I can see why he has a biased point of view, and definitely from what I know, I don't. There is some cases of that from what I know, but Southpaw has his own video. Not going to weigh in on that particular mess.
So this is just a basic comprehension issue. This is just a basic like, why don't you try to
True,
understand what
Clark.
point the person's actually making, right?
Southpaw, did you notice this stuff at the time and dismiss it and just kind of let it go with the greater context of the length of their videos? Or
My experience has been that upon everything that happened that SK outlined in his video that we'll talk about later, it forced me to look back on a lot of things that happened. And this is an experience that you might have with friends who you have like a fondness for, but then something happens and it kind of forces you to reevaluate certain things, and you start noticing things that were kind of staring you in the face the whole time that you kind of just glossed over because they were your friend.
There are hints of it.
And you can overcorrect with that sort of event occurring. You need to see. I personally think it's probably smart that he goes through all the events, all the criticism, and tries to come back a little bit more objectively, get input on what's good and bad to put in these videos. What works, what doesn't. I'm hoping Southpaw does not misrepresent anything EFAP does, and there are some devoted EFAP fans who are going to watch it and still just mischaracterize him. They'll probably even use the obsessed too long thing, and I think that's disappointing, but I have to state Southpaw brought up he has a bias against EFAP, so he's going to overcorrect in his criticism and maybe even is being influenced by being befriended by groups like the Fandom Initiative here.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened here, where like it was and in some cases it could even be a matter of I turned a blind eye to genuinely shady behavior. And one thing I just never really got to say at the start of this is like, I wouldn't be surprised if the general response from my chat or from this chat is comparable to that of a joke of a woman who didn't think that the leopards eating people's faces party would come for her face when she voted for them. And that's kind of what happened here. And so I'm fine if people are like, well, Southpaw got what he deserved because he was with EFAP for this long and he ignored all these issues. And it's like, well, I mean, that's a valid response to have.
Not really. I mean, it's kind of like
wow. I have to agree with Dane here. Okay. No. But yeah, this is the problem when this is sort of like people who walk away from the left, in my opinion. Sometimes they overcompensate and go full grifter. What these people would call grifter. They might not understand. They might be like they pushed them to the other side. Don't want to really bring up, but Anne's a great case of people who are just trying to push Anne to the right wing, just saying right wing grifter before even the shit. It's almost like they're trying to push her because she has to be an example. And play it and pause.
Abuser logic, and I don't think it's valid at all.
Yeah,
actually,
I don't like it at all.
Deserves to be, even if you mistakenly get in, become friends or become part of a community or whatever relationship. I don't think that's valid.
I understand the perspective of that of the leopards eating people's faces party joke. This was just a case of I didn't believe that these were issues at the time. And I've had to reevaluate a lot of things as a result of my personal experiences with these people. And unfortunately, I have a different perspective than a lot of their friends may have now. And the unfortunate thing is that I know why some people like Adam Friended might be blind to that sort of thing and might be inclined to defend them against someone like me or SK, and why they might have this lens that makes them think that SK and I are just backstabbing them or attacking them for the sake of it.
Adam.
Okay, before Dean comes in, yes, very good to recognize Southpaw here. That understanding why other people will view things differently because they don't have all the knowledge. They can't be autistic enough to keep up with the details. It does not affect them personally. They didn't hear about it because of all the shit. This is a good way to actually go about how you're going about things in this. There's several things I'll agree with Southpaw on here. And we even all, I think most of us could agree with Dane's take that Southpaw really using the Leopard Party thing is sort of off base.
Brendan in particular, he just runs to the defense of basically any of, you know, the any fandom menace or orbiting kind of groups or people. He does that.
And Dane knows this so well, just because how he characterized when he debated with Stitch and Adam. Too true. Adam can get under people's skin.
Because they're his friends, because they're people that he works with. That's fundamentally what's like. I don't watch this content, but I've seen like maybe one or two of his and Stitch's streams, and I've because I mean I was a part of this community for a long time, right? I understand psychologically speaking, like what it is to really think these people are your friends, and anyone that goes after them to any degree is the enemy, and they're dishonest and they're liars and they're
a bit of a grip element with Adam in particular. We're actually supposed to. Are we debating them on the 14th, Bob? Is that set?
Yes.
Or?
Yes. Well,
Really?
technically, we're just watching a friendly video.
Right.
With them.
Just watching a video.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sure it will be 100%. They'll be 100% fair and balanced because that's
Just
what they're known
chill
for.
time with some bros.
Yeah.
Response to nothing.
Yeah, they've proven that they can be chill with leftists. Dylan Burns, Anna, FD Signifier, for Christ's sakes. Okay, a lot of proof that they can be reasonable and compromising with leftists and liberal people. Yeah, they go off sometimes a little bit too far, especially Adam, the elephant of the group, and Sitch overcompensates sometimes for that. Too much generosity. Yeah, that's a weird dynamic there. Let me not get too much into that here.
Media adequately.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
I was
think
going to ask
you
is,
covered it actually extremely well. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, like, would it be safe to say that your personal perspective of as far as like social politics and your awareness of these issues at all has also evolved since then?
Yeah, I mean, I've usually been a pretty left-leaning person, but again,
Sure.
a common issue with this is thinking, well, I believe these things, and therefore, if I'm cool with these people in general, and these people are cool with me in general, that means that anything that they say goes, and I can give them a pass on certain things that maybe I would be willing to criticize in other places, but eventually it gets to the point where you're like, well, substantively, the stuff that they're talking about is kind of shitty in Warren's criticism here, especially if your whole shtick is, well, I criticize stuff because I love it, like Star Wars. Star Wars is a thing that we've been propagated to be allowed to criticize because we care about Star Wars, we love Star Wars, and we want Star Wars to be good. And then whenever we do that here with folks who like to criticize Star Wars, we get attacked. In the stuff that we say is twisted into the worst faith light possible. And again, it's not everyone in that community that does that. But it's not an isolated incident that this stuff happens to me and SK. And that then naturally leads us to start talking to folks that you people don't like. Organized Chaos and Dane, like you two guys are not very well liked in that community, but because SK and I aren't well liked in that community, but because SK and I aren't well liked in that community either, and we understand that the reasons why are pretty crappy, we then look at this and it's like, I kind of want to talk to these two now and actually get their perspective, because these are not reputable sources, the community that is, on why
Well, you can. This is sort of a problem. Just assuming because EFAP doesn't think they're good sources or good critics, that, I mean, it's fine to come in and have a talk. I respect Southpaw and SK here for coming in. No, not SK too much. He kowtows to him and just agrees. But Southpaw coming on here, and some of his takes I personally disagree with. It's his perspective, and I can understand why he feels that way. I can acknowledge that. But frankly, these guys, maybe not back then. Maybe people haven't looked at Dane and Bob back then to create a real critical response. But I've seen enough content, enough coverage, came to my own conclusions alongside other people like Andrew Clark, Gray Puhan. There's even some other people who've done videos on Dane and Bob. Can't remember the name of that one guy, but plenty of people have been critical outside of just EFAP. But this, not much was known at this time, and gives a really good insight having Southpaw trying to come in here to explain this. I think he's mischaracterizing them a little bit, but he's framing it as we have a bias against it, so I'm not going to be too hard on him for most of this. I might be even a little bit too generous, but you know what? I feel like he's coming in with good faith effort.
These are bad people. And like my first impression of Organized Chaos wasn't great. It was the Doctor Strange 2 response. And I think there's a lot of problems with that response stream. At the same time, it's like, well, I don't think that this is a person who...
Yeah. Andrew Clark brings up a very good point. It's funny because Southpaw said the logic was bad in reference to TERFs. That's why, yeah, he sort of, him going on a tirade about TERFs are friends to no one, just reflectively to sort of counter Rags' narrative. Seems like he's applying that to TERFs when he really hasn't looked into TERFs. There might, yeah, absolutely some crazy TERFs out there who are definitely transphobic, but there's some people that they consider TERFs who just are gender critical, especially this wasn't that long ago. This was a couple months ago, 6 months, maybe a little bit further. But he's not able to apply that on the political, but he's unaware and getting his information from people like SK supposedly. So, yeah, maybe I'm a dummy, but I do not think is a very fair-minded individual. I think he's trying, but I think there's some biases interfering with this. But I could be wrong on that.
Who's incapable of having a good faith discussion. Well, the word incapable, of course, might come up later. Depends on how long we go for.
911. They're like, oh, sorry, yeah, that's right. You're on the list where we don't, you don't actually like us or respect us or want us, so we're not going to help you out at all.
Pause.
I like how as well it's
that's monstrously dystopian.
The whole fucking point.
Okay, I will agree. Rags, take it with a grain of humor. He goes a little extreme here, but this is edginess humor. I just think he goes a little bit too far here.
Whole fucking point of calling them pigs is the fact that they aren't doing their jobs.
Exactly.
They're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I made the comparison when we watched this before, like of it's like if the fire department kept just not getting to the place in time to put the fire out, and every building's just burning down or whatever. Like you can't just say, "Hey, fire department, you're kind of being pieces of shit right now."
No, Dane. This is totally going to make people who say "fuck the police" suddenly think, you know what? The police aren't actually that bad. The fact that they never come to help me when I actually need them, like maybe you can address the issue by having the police do their job and actually address the criticisms being directed at the police, and then the "fuck the police" sentiment might actually decrease. That's a novel idea, right? Because this is not a
what.
This is not a
have them
sentiment.
do their job properly would help.
It's not
There's what?
I thought they were just supposed to be able to do whatever the fuck they wanted and like kill whoever they wanted and not be accountable for shit. I just thought that was what they do.
Well, this is not a sentiment that's very popular in the UK compared to the US, right? So there's clearly something that the UK is doing different that's warranting that. There might be still issues with policing in the UK. But not to the degree of the US. That's probably because the UK aren't allowed to just shoot people that cops are in the US, where they're constantly.
Oh God, so freaking misinformed. Yeah, UK's going in the other direction. They have no guns Knife crimes are going completely up. And this is just freaking SK focusing, not being ignorant of this particular. Yeah, not all cop criticism the same. Braggs is talking about people who hate the police on a fundamental level. Yeah, he could be mischaracterizing this Frills guy and lumping him with this bunch, and he's not going off of that sentiment. But he's a very emotional beast, Rags. You have to accept him for what he is. You can criticize him completely, but to say that he's being out of pocket and you going off on, yeah, cops are bad, you're swinging back in the completely wrong way. This is not how criticism should be done, in my opinion. The politics, when you don't understand it and you mix it in with your criticism, completely degrade. And as much as I dislike SK for the most part with his criticism that I've seen so far, very pedantic, and I'm not sure if he's completely serious in all his criticism, which I think is going to hurt him in the long run. He's going to go on later and be like, oh, some of those earlier videos were just a troll. It's going to hurt him in the long run. But seriously, this is bad optics, getting into this so deeply. And stop. They're EFAP and talking about politics and not really letting them get to the point.
Shooting people and getting away with it, and then going on paid vacation because they're distressed because they shot Daniel Shaver while Daniel Shaver was following their orders, and they got so distressed over doing that.
Wow.
It's even worse than you might imagine too, because to call the one that made the mistake a pig because you think that they're like, I don't know, hyper prejudiced and a bad person. What about the ones that just turn up to do their job? What about the one that corrects
he wasn't
the police
talking
officer that
about
made
them.
the mistake? Are
He
they all
wasn't
pigs?
talking
Literally didn't
about
say.
Like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he technically.
Yeah, he didn't. I will agree.
He didn't say about that. He didn't
This
say,
is a lie.
they're-
This is a
they're
lie.
They're
We're
literally
talking about
extrapolating.
characters that haven't been brought up yet. What?
There was a fuck up that I did in the whole like saga of my breakup with them, right? Where I accused them of lying at one point. Now, again, we can get to that at one point. I can explain why I at least believed it when I said that. But like, that's an arguably bad faith assertion that I made. But the same logic applies here, folks. Like, there's a good faith interpretation and a bad faith interpretation.
Yeah, and they are taking the bad faith interpretation here, and it might be unwarranted. But again, is this a majority of their criticism? That's something you would have to go into depth for to truly tell. When you have just a super cut of all their worst moments, I think this is taken from like a 10-minute sequence. This is going to create a very bad perception of them. And out of how many hours? What percentage is it? Is it even going to, all these bad takes, could you get even like a 0.1% where you can make these sort of arguments against EFAP? I don't even think that would work in reality. You can see them at the worst.
And they're going with the worst faith interpretation.
This is total post talk, but like, I think your statement was accurate. Maybe you didn't have reasons to believe it at the time, but like...
I mean, once we get into the whole like the degree of media literacy that's required, then that's an issue. And then another thing that media said, our cops don't have guns, but there are still issues. A cop just got arrested for, I assume, sexual assault over 20 years, using his authority as a cop to get away with. That's still an issue. Then is like
there are inherent issues to the hierarchy, that the power dynamic that exists just by nature of police existing. There's issues with it.
Well, hierarchies existing in general, right? Like, have you ever seen the movie Triangle of Sadness?
No.
No, I've not heard of it.
That's my favorite Oscar buzzed movie of this year. Like, I think that Everything Everywhere All at Once is going to win, but Triangle of Sadness is like one of my favorite movies that came out last year. And it has a whole social satire on hierarchy, in which I'm at least inclined to believe that what the film is saying is that all hierarchies are A, inevitable, and B, bad.
It kind of seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I just think that what you're describing here is like, the unfortunate thing is I think that there's things that happen that require cops to be necessary. But then the problem is, for as long as there's going to be cops, there's still going to be what nothing but media describes there, and that's an issue that has to be addressed. That's
Right.
something like, if you want to call cops pigs because that happens and they're just allowed to do that and it's easy for them to do it, then obviously there's a systemic issue and it's not just a bad apples issue, right? If you have one,
okay, I wanted him to go a little bit longer, but no. Yeah, you're basing a take off of real life police, off of Oscar bait movie that you believe the argument in. It's a little bit flawed and it's sort of backwards that you're bringing up this point, Southpaw, here in particular, that, yeah, there's much arguments that hierarchy is inevitable or bound to happen over time as long as humans operate as we do naturally or unnaturally in a lot of cases. But to say all hierarchies is bad, you can say all hierarchies self-select for corruption the longer they go on in the chain of process. But a democracy like we have in the US and a lot of other Western countries, European countries, yeah, the badness, as you say, the hierarchies can be bad, but they can be bad in a multitude of different ways. And there are ways to combat this. You can mitigate the corruption, would be a better word than bad, that all hierarchies are bad. This is just such ignorance on the political understanding of Southpaw here. I really think he should step out of this territory. I hope he does. He doesn't bring much of it up. I mean, there's some basic issues of care, harm that you can really get into without really getting into the political, divorcing sort of how people act, opposed to the politics of it all. And they're sort of conflating the two here.
One cop who's abusing one person, and then you've got 6 cops who don't abuse that person, but they look at it and they do nothing about it. You've got 7 bad cops, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great attitude.
They're
right.
just because remember,
yeah, very
profiling
and
profiling a huge group of people based on the actions of a small.
It's like the atheist who hates all Christians now because they lost their faith in God.
Minority. That's very, very bad to do.
Mhm.
All right, we shouldn't ever do that. That's
Mhm.
definitely not something that's cool. However,
You're part of the problem.
if that group
You're
is
part of the
police
problem.
officers,
Yes, or USK. Rags is actually making a legitimate point now.
Oh my god, dude.
Rags, you are literally part of the problem.
So,
Yeah.
by the way, occupation that you can choose as a police officer,
Right.
different from demographic that's immutable and that you have no choice in being a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Systemic analysis versus, like just it's a system that's being analyzed, and these are representatives.
Yes, but the judgment of the general stereotype is the same. You're saying just because someone goes into the police force, you should have a certain stereotype of them, which is very generalized, which is very unreflective of reality. Yeah, there are bad cops. There's always going to be bad cops. And you're not going to be able to get rid of that. And some of those bad cops are going to be able to make it at the top. And some of them get exposed for their corruption and get fired. Hell, the Baltimore area, they keep on voting Democratic, even though with the mayor, despite having an independent, even after the last one was corrupted. And it just, the systemic is not the system. The systemic comes, this is a personal belief of mine, the whole political nature, sort of human nature is systemic. So saying it's the system, you would need an AI to create a system of government before it won't be tread towards freaking corruption. And even then, you would have to have a really good sort of AI, unbiased, the Mahler of robot analogy to really avoid, and it would still fall into corruption, just probably at a slower rate. People would have to learn how to manipulate the system. Hackers perfect example. It's never going to happen, and this is just
of that system. So yeah, of course they're going to be the
And
ones that are screwed.
again, he keeps fucking missing. The reason that they're being called pigs is not just because they're fucking cops.
I don't think that
It's
anyone
not
truly
because
thinks
they're
that
they're part of that group of people.
I don't think that anyone just thinks, yeah, well, if you're a cop, you're bad, and it's because you're a cop. It's more like, well,
Yeah,
if
that's
you're a
literally not
cop
what he
and
said.
you're, yeah, it's like if
you just said that, Southpaw. Maybe you were joking. All cops are bad. Okay. Sorry, shouldn't have interrupted, but still, Southpaw's saying that. You sort of said that earlier. Maybe it was a joke. Should be good faith with that interpretation. Didn't sound as a joke earlier.
if you're a cop and you're abusing people or you're doing nothing about people being abused, then yeah, you're a bad person.
There sadly are people that think the first thing you said, and it's, you know, it
There is also, see, such an elementary understanding of politics just hurts me, and freaking criticism. It should be kept out or analyzed with someone intelligent in politics. Because just saying sometimes undercover police officers have to do bad things to get into, to put away worse people. And that's just a simple fact of reality. There is the ideal version, which that's one of my criticism of how all these people, SK especially, even EFAP to a certain extent, the ideal version of Spider-Man, Batman, they go with all these ideal versions of these superhero and don't consider the realities of the scenarios that they're in. Batman, no matter how bad Gotham is, has to not kill people. Even when they talk about the Dark Knight trilogy, it's like Ra's al Ghul. I'm not going to. There was something about I don't have to save you at the end. I'm sure a lot of people freaked out about that in the car chase scene in the Heath Ledger movie. I thought that he's probably killing so many people. Sometimes to get rid of the worst scum, you have to break a few eggs. And Spider-Man, I can understand criticizing him more for that. But Batman, vigilante, he's more film noir type of superhero here.
also is just it kind of defeats the point of having a conversation as well in the other direction. So
that's true. That's true.
And apply that to the entire group as a whole unfairly. But these are very principled people who are very intelligent.
Oh, eat shit.
And yeah, just to back what you said.
Oh, eat shit yourself, guys. Yeah, all cops, when they choose to be cops, since they're not changing the system. What about all the socialists like Hassan, who freaking says they live in a society, so they have to become capitalistic? I think that's more of a hypocritical act that they leftists defend all the time. Bosch is freaking arguments for that, but that can't apply to cops who are trying to be good in the system because they're not changing. Maybe they want to rise in the ranks and do good. You got to do good on a small level sometimes to rise up. Sometimes you got to look the other way. There is a balance of power. That's, you would have to weigh each one ethically of what bad can you actually let happen in the world to sort of hopefully make it good. I'm not saying it's good, but people's personal perspective, especially someone who wants to go into the police force, would have to balance that with their comrades. And there's just so many flaws with bringing all these issues up here, and they spend so long, so I'd let me not delay it anymore with my long
dude.
Oh, the line about principles is just like,
off.
oh, I'm num. This is delicious for me.
Swim in boiling piss.
About the line about principles is just like, oh, I'm num. This is delicious for me.
Swim in boiling piss.
Me,
oh my god.
Yeah.
I hope you never have kids. Fucking hell, the things you would say to them and teach them.
Yeah, same thing to you, SK. Same thing to you, doubly probably.
So are the black cops, are they pigs too? That is a good point.
You're the fucking pig right here. You're the fucking pig.
What I will tell you, is if they're like the black cops that are just enabling the abusers, yeah, they're pigs. It has nothing to do with them being black. It has everything to do with whether they are enabling abuse and systemic corruption in their institution. We're allowed to say this because we're not worried about being called racist, because we know it has nothing to do with whether we think that black people are just inherently bad, because that's not what we believe. In Loki, even if you've never read the comics, right? So I've never read the comics, right? And if you have no knowledge of who Kang the Conqueror is, and then you watch Loki, it's like, well, He Who Remains is just explaining to you who Kang the Conqueror is and is setting that up. So if you have never heard of him before, okay, it means something when he gets killed because you understand the stakes here. Whereas in Avengers 2012, I saw that movie having never read a single comic, having no idea who the fuck Thanos was before this movie came out. And I saw that end card, I'm like, who the fuck is that? Why is this a big, why is the audience gasping at this? I don't get this, right? So like objectively speaking, Loki is literally like holding up to scrutiny in terms of like as a standalone thing, right? I'm not saying that Loki is a good show overall or it's a masterpiece. I'm saying that that He Who Remains is a character that they've at least set up in Loki, and they aren't depending on you having read the comics, which by the way, the EFAP guys are constantly going, fuck the comics. It should stand on its own as a movie or a TV show without you having to do all this homework to understand.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think.
Yeah. But having fan service at it, no problem with that for the comic book fans. I would like to talk to people about fan service. It's a very nuanced discussion. Fan service doesn't make things inherently bad. You shouldn't judge something badly because they do something for the comic book fans, though.
I think that the show pulled that off well for what it's doing. I was just giving the context because I am a comic nerd. But
well, hold on. You agreeing with that? I thought that you guys just hated whatever EFAP said. Why are you guys agreeing with something that they said?
Oh, you're right. Let me go ahead.
Yeah,
I fucked up.
Yeah, you guys should not be allowed.
Now I'm against it. Now I'm against it.
Yeah, you guys should not be allowed to agree with anything reasonable that EFAP said.
Just try to get back from criticism.
Backstabbers. Yeah, let's be contrarian. You're just a bunch of contrarians.
Framing a black person that they found as a nobody they found on the street.
Yeah.
Does that not strike you as like, okay, what are you trying to say there?
I just want to point out here. So
yeah, no, if someone were to say that Rags was a racist, I would not be against viewing it like that. I think that it's very much possible that he is.
SK, for the love of God, let me just try to steal.
It's very much possible SK is a racist. It's very much possible SK is also black. But you can still be racist even if you're black. Who knows? Who cares? Speculating on this here seems disingenuous and just poisoning the well, trying to buddy up with this company. See if Southpaw gets back on it.
Steel Man Rags here, and I'm not defending him, but I will say, so going by what he said here, where he's like calling He Who Remains better than Thanos. I think what's going through Rags's mind is that he's somehow distorted what I think Nandu V Movies was the YouTuber they're responding to here.
Yeah, it's Captain Midnight.
Oh, Captain Midnight. They sound so similar. I'm so sorry. But
yeah, I'm not sure. It's one of the two. Yeah.
Okay. So the guy that they're responding to, maybe in his mind, this is just because we've understood that EFAP are just illiterate when it comes to comprehending a point. Maybe in his mind, he's distorted what was actually said into, well, He Who Remains was better than Thanos from Infinity War, which is a joke statement to say. And so if that's what he believes, I can kind of understand why he has the reaction that he does. But at the same time, that defense appeals to they're just shit at their jobs at comprehending.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like he was pretty clearly saying that, like,
even if he believed that it was about Infinity War Thanos, that's still like loser they pulled off the street. Seriously.
Again, I'm not defending him. I'm trying to steel man him, and I'm not doing a great job of it.
Yeah, too much. I think I cut this. This is cut of a cut. And I'm really thinking at least Southpaw is trying to steal man from all these freaking little racist commands. I'm sort of lost here, but it's my own fault. Whenever I cut this, I left out the context, but it's good to see Southpaw is trying to steal man and not going with the racism card.
He's also showing the 2012 Avengers Thanos too, so it's like doesn't leave a lot of room for misinterpreting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy just said, calling anyone someone they picked off the street is not a nice thing to say to anyone in general. Absolutely. The reason I drew on the race aspect is just, well, one, because of what we...
Because you're playing the race card because you're being lazy critic here, okay? You're just falling... Maybe you're just pandering to fucking Fandom Initiative, just falling into their flow. As I said, I think SK is just extremely influenced by the people around him and can be... That's my speculation. But he still does this occasionally. Maybe he's pulling back on this somewhat. I hope SK does pull back on this sort of bullshit. But as I said, recently, Colin, he brought up the transphobia claim, then tried to brush it off. No, I wasn't trying to poison the well by saying he's transphobic. Fuck off, SK. You haven't changed that much. Stop with this freaking political stuff if you want your criticism. I mean, there is a certain point where you can criticize someone for their politics, but sometimes you pull some out-of-pocket bullshit.
We've already talked about with, like, what we've already seen kind of sets precedent for... I wouldn't be surprised if he's talking about racial poverty and stuff like that, or referencing that. I won't say for sure that it is, but I
wouldn't.
That's good to know.
I probably wouldn't even really consider that first, or maybe even at all, if we didn't know what we already know.
We didn't see the other stuff.
Yeah.
Speculative.
Oh, pattern of behavior with cherry-picked examples. Sorry, Dane. I'm thinking you're losing on this pattern of behavior. People are going through your videos on all sides, and your pattern of behavior is much more disingenuous than any of these other people. Like, let's even say 1% of EFAP's content can be cherry-picked like that, and that's being generous. Dane, especially, even Bob to a lesser extent, Dane is probably about at least 90%, and that's probably being generous. It's probably higher than that, where he goes after the political angle in all of this, and maybe 10% where he talks about the politics. Bob might be a little bit better, like let's say 70-30 for Bob, and that's probably being generous herself. Just the percentages does not match up here. And for this narrative, this pattern of behavior, sorry, you're losing the war if you want to establish this. You're going to have to come up with a new standard if you want to pull off your grift, Dane.
I would still say it's somewhat speculative, even with all the context that you have, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. We don't have any smoking gun or evidence or anything, so that's all it can be. Yeah.
All we can say is it's a hypocritical and rude statement to make.
Really feels like the goalposts are just constantly moving with these folks. And again, SK and I just have shitloads of experience talking about this shit with people and seeing exactly these rhetorical moves. And
yeah, and you might be biased by dealing with the people who just want to shit on you, Southpaw, okay? The people who really want to get into this and want to discourage. How many people have come over to you? Maybe, well, he did admit he's talking to people who are EFAP fans, and they've come over to his way of thinking. Personally, I will agree after seeing that video by SK. SK's video is horrible with how he frames it, but legitimately everything there does see some problems. But when you're just seeing a lot of people being disingenuous, you're going to have a sort of distorted view of EFAP if you view them for their most non-critical fans who don't even listen to your argument. So think about that.
We've been doing this long enough that we're like, for a lot of people, it might be distressing and they get really stressed out arguing with them and then they freak out. But SK and I are just so used to it at this point, and we're just like, at this point, I'm at the stage where I'm just being like, oh, you're pulling this maneuver right here. Oh, you're doing this trick. Oh, this is why your argument sucks here. You have to do this a very long time to even get used to what they try to do. But
sorry to pause, but Bob saying, yeah, well, when does he ever implement this? He has some of the most bad faith in the debates I've seen with Eric July, even Ethan Van Sciver, sort of nerd at. He sort of just folded like a fucking paper crane because he couldn't make all his racism because she's on the left, couldn't use his normal tactics, and he just folded like a paper crane. So I think coming at Bob from a leftist perspective, or even just a good liberal, not classical, more right-winging, would make him fold. So people come at him, and he still characterized some people who are more moderate, like Sishin Adam.
Once you do
this sort of thing,
that's when, again, it's like, why are you backstabbing them here? Why are you attacking them? It's like, why are you calling it an attack? Why don't you talk about what I actually talk about? Why don't you actually listen to what I have to say?
That might interrupt their worldview. That they're not.
They have to shut themselves off from that. And again, I understand what that feels like completely. I've been there.
Wanda can't be Xavier because the Fox X-Men movies that aren't canon. Like, shut the fuck up.
I just want to. This is kind of, I guess, low hanging fruit or something.
Brainless morons, dude.
It really seems like just the vibe I get from that exchange when I've watched this clip is that heel versus babyface is a fucking moron, right? Like, I think we can all pretty much.
No,
that.
He's a deep
thinker. He's the smartest member.
Very
thoughtful.
From what I've seen, probably okay. I don't watch him enough, so I can't make that assessment. Comes off as sort of idiotic. Okay.
I have to assume the vibe in that room, or well, not in the literal room, but like at that moment, the other guys are just like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" Because he's not saying anything.
Completely fair. I mean, there was a point where I remember this was before I had my falling out with EFAP, but like there was a point where they were doing an EFAP with him about Wonder Woman 1984, and heel versus babyface randomly brings up the strangest point of criticism about how Max Lord's son looks Asian or something instead of Pedro Pascal's race. And I know that there was an extensive period where Mahler and Fringy and Rags are just listening to this, and they're clearly not enthused with this point, and they even push back against it for a long time. And chat joins in on that, you know. So it's like you guys might not know about that because you don't really watch EFAP much, but
good point. As someone who knows EFAP can actually watch it and be able to tell with these instances going too far. Also bring up the point, oh, they have heels versus babyface. He's a moron. Why do they have him on EFAP? Why not have him on EFAP? These guys just don't seem to respect diversity of opinions. Even if you think some people are dumb or have bad arguments, sometimes it's good to have them on to host them. Maybe point out where they're good, correct them. Maybe they'll go along if you do it in the right way. But you know what? That does not enter their mind. Dane does not care about changing people's mind. Dane seems to care about preaching to the choir.
That's at least one instance I can point to. Like, yeah, as once said something so stupid that like there was a dedicated portion of an EFAP just dedicated to shitting on a very stupid point that he made.
It's like generally think EFAP are like evil people, and
I don't. I know that like you got the EFAP fan base that say that, but again, SK and I have been dealing with this fan base and their straw men for long enough to know. Okay,
well, I think they're just subhuman, and that they're
yeah, and that's your problem, SK. You're not treating them like freaking human beings. Yeah, if they're flawed, don't just call them all assholes. There's some people you have to give up on. They're just idiotic, won't listen to you. You have to accept that and move on to someone who might actually fucking be open and sensible.
malicious.
Like I've been doing for 3 years, like looking at toxic fandoms and various different elements from different types of fandoms. So like,
okay, that is a good If that's true, Gary and Az was talking about a female physical attractiveness, and Mahler redirected the conversation to her acting ability. That's where critics should go. How does she fit the role? I mean, there is some point to how someone plays a role, how well they look the role, but when it comes to the actual medium, how they portray the character is way more important to how good they look. So good on Mahler for that.
I've seen some fucking shit people do, like people that come to mind for when I think of subhuman pieces of shit. And EFAP isn't necessarily that. Rags is probably bordering on it specifically,
most
but
times.
Rags kind of steps over the line for me.
I think he's there.
Yeah, he's not the. EFAP for me is not usually the worst. Even their fans, even though they are insufferable. I think probably Comicsgate is probably the worst one I've had.
Yeah, Comicsgate is fucking atrocious, dude. It's a good fucking sport.
Oh, you two should talk. You're dealing debates with Comicsgate and Dane's treating of the victim of Comicsgate, Nerdette. Oh, she's being Comicsgate. She only turned blah blah blah. Some serious crap there. But yeah, you did a poor ass showing, Bob, with both Eric July and Ethan Van Sciver. Okay, yeah. Eric was sort of asked to talk about you being a deadbeat dad. Get over it. It's the internet, okay? You pissed him off. Should have he done that? Probably not. Does he have the right to do it? Absolutely. It's the wild west nature of the internet. If you don't want to get these guys deplatformed, you use this Weasley language to try to paint them as certain things that they're not. And I don't even care that much for either one of those guys, but they deserve more charitability in those debates than Bob gave them.
SK and I are very frustrated with EFAP's community from what we've had. But again, I just want to highlight, not all. Again, we've got people in that community that were willing to speak. Again, I think there's a mixture of people who are actually genuinely interested in critical thinking, right? And then that adds like an air of legitimacy to the folks in there who don't actually care, but they might think that they care. And the pretense of critical thinking and objectivity gives them kind of like the safety net of, I can say whatever the fuck I want, and I can go on these vicious insults towards people instead of debunking their points, right? And they'll do that.
And take issue with that. Have fun with it, with the idiots. And be like, okay, this isn't the whole EFAP fan base, but you're making enemies that way. And those people, you want to call them toxic fans. Typically, those sort of toxic, disingenuous fans will spread the rumor to more casual fans. Even EFAP has the sort of casual versus diehard people, and you're going to get a mix of diehard, dyed in the wool of objective criticism, and everyone else is dumb. I had my fair share of run-ins with idiots like that. And you will have someone genuinely going for the actual truth and want the arguments to be heard. And you should be happy that their community is like that. I understand you hate the toxic portion of their community. No one should be happy with it, but yeah, optics is something that doesn't seem Southpaw, SK, or even any of these guys understand well. So I hope Southpaw gets over his shit.
Instead of actually doing any form of critical thinking. But like, there's also folks in there who, I think there's genuinely good folks in there who are just kind of stuck in a pretty shit situation.
So just mathematically speaking, right? I think that, there's a lot more people that we don't hear from in the EFAP, in any fan base, than we do hear from. And the ones that we do hear from are, by and large, generally going to be the people with the most pointed opinions and reactive, impulse to let everybody know what that they think they're, whatever the fuck they want to call them. So it's like, just that's being, I'm charitable with pretty much any fan base I've dealt with. I've spoken with a few comic skaters who are like, yeah, these other guys are fucking, wish they wouldn't do that. And then my point is always like, well, why do you still associate with it if it's just known by and large this terrible thing? But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I imagine there's some decent people, probably a lot of them.
For SK and me, it's just more frustrating because of the pretense. Again, the pretense of critical thinking and objectivity makes it so when we're dealing with an individual who obviously doesn't actually care about those things and doesn't actually do any of the work involved in doing critical thinking. And then
Yeah, absolutely. And this is too true. Bob went after Eric for hating his own race. Eric later pissed off when he went at being divorced and separate. Yeah, I'm not going to say Eric July's anger was not justified and emotional. And yeah, I mean, I frankly think Eric July shouldn't have got pissed off by a pissant like Bob, organized chaos to go to those lanes, but he had the right to do that. And it's sort of Southpaw sort of researched these guys as they've been researched and covered them. Maybe he's just blinded. I mean, yeah, maybe he's just like, okay, even if he got into the research with all this stuff, the debates, the horrible takes of all these people, but he's sort of bringing up a few good points here and there when he's not falling to sort of this bias, anti-EFAP bias that he's bound to be in and even admitted to.
And they're just making these vicious attacks on us that then, like, we're having to do just a ridiculous amount of work having to respond to these lies or misinformation that they can spread about us without like literally there's this double standard of they are innocent even after we prove them guilty, and SK and I are guilty until proven innocent because they can just make up these claims. And meanwhile, SK and I are presenting receipts or showing what we're actually saying, and it doesn't fucking matter. It's like they live in this alternate reality, and it's because of that again, that pretense of you're supposed to be.
Okay, I think they're getting into the terrain that I don't really want to get into, but so I'm going to wrap this up. So, yeah, Southpaw is bringing up a very good point, but going back to his point about cops, all cops are bad. It seems like he's sort of assuming, he's even admitted that not all EFAP fans are like this, but he's making a false equivalency here that I think is detrimental. Maybe he's trying to play it up to this doomed relationship him and SK had briefly with the Fandom Initiative. That was never going to work out. Fandom Initiative has shown they'll throw people under the bus. Even though they tried. Eduardo, I haven't been seeing a lot of the Wikipedia guy who showed up earlier in this. I haven't seen him a lot. I've seen a lot of changing cast. Nope, he didn't show. He showed in the clips earlier that I just played with SK. Supposedly nickname CP, the bad comedian that's I've seen his credits from. But yeah, this really, I think Southpaw overall did the best job he could in this, and he fell into some of the traps, and he's even admitting a lot of his ignorance on this political stuff, but then he threw his weight behind several things like all cops are bad, and the turf comment. I think this has both good points and bad. Maybe I'll link the actual edit that I originally created. Let's see if they freaking actually have this up on YouTube. I'll link them in this if you want to take a look through itself. It's got its good moments, its bad moments, and I'm not trying to rep for. Originally, I was gonna just look into Southpaw and see how the claims are. And I can understand his grievances with EFAP, and I even have a few myself. I'm sure everyone wants to be critical against these people we like, hold them up to a higher standard. But these people aren't immortal gods, and people who don't think critically about their criticals just fall into the same traps. But frankly, definitely seen signs of SK just being just as bad as EFAP. Maybe he's trying to troll EFAP. That's the steel man of that with some of his bad takes and some of his posturing and some of his media takes recently. But I think he's just like, EFAP's bad because of the political takes. They're excessive See, I don't know. I'll have to do a deep dive into SK if I want to do it. But thank everyone for joining. I hope you got something out of this stream. Never know how these things are going to go. Have a good night. Until next time, I'm done. Bye.